If you told me 7 years ago that I'd end up with 100 episodes on my channel, I would have told you that you're crazy. But here we are at episode 100. This episode will not consist of an interview or me covering a particular topic on my own. Rather, it'll be a clip show of every single video that I published on this channel in the order that I published it. In between each season, I will give a brief analysis of what I was thinking of at the time. And once the clip show is over, I will do a brief explanation of what I plan to do in the future, not just with this channel, but overall. So here it is. The blog that no one watched. 100 episodes of AngelDodger.
Granddad never mentioned that there were men as dark as this. Wow, look at that nose. He's just like a pig. He's a monster! Hut!
The first video that was published on this channel was on December 26, 2011. The reason why I decided to publish a video at that point in time is because my friend up to that point was telling me that, hey, I should, share some of my stories in like a book or something. And since I wasn't going to write a book, I decided to go to YouTube to share some of my opinions. I used my friend's camera at the time. That's kind of what launched the whole thing. And after some moderate success, I decided to expand further, using my friend's camera to interview other people, and using my incredibly shitty computer camera to do rants on my own. In fact, in the first episode, there was no plan to really bring somebody else on. It was because my friend jumped in at the time that really gave me the idea to interview other people, which is something that I've done consistently to this day. I didn't really know what I wanted to talk about. Well, I did, but I didn't necessarily know if it was okay to talk about. So I kind of beat around the bush with it, talking about other issues like double standards or interracial dating, but not really hitting as hard on the topic that you kind of know by now what I want to discuss until episode 15. But you can see even then some sense of what was really getting under my skin. So here it is, the first season.
Everything I do in my life, I do it for my self-satisfaction. I mean, hopefully that includes pleasing other people as well, mutual benefit if that's a possibility. But I'm first, I work for my benefit, and I make sure I get what I need out of any guy that I'm spending time with.
You'll use somebody just to get what you want because you're scared that if something actually happens, that they'll step on you. That's what you said.
No. I mean, what I'm saying is that
I didn't get the memo that said that just because I was born a certain race means that I'm supposed to do everything stereotypical of that race. Am I supposed to, eat rice and beans? Am I supposed to, just like the dance or just anything that, is any type of stereotypical joke that you can make about Spanish people? Am I supposed to know all those things? It's a shame that in the year 2012 we can still feel awkward in terms of hanging out with a group of people, not because of the fact that they have different interests or because they have different goals in life, but because of the simple reason that they're all a different race than you are. Look at it from the standpoint of the opposition. Occupy Wall Street. To me, that sounds like you just, stand there and protest. If I'm, a hedge fund manager or if I work on Wall Street, I look at that, I just, I would say, okay, that's annoying. I'm just going to walk into my office or walk into the trading floor and do my business anyways because I don't necessarily care. If what you're saying is correct, I don't understand how somebody would care just because all of a sudden now people are saying, oh, well, now I noticed it. So what are you gaining?
Well, in all reality, the term Occupy Wall Street in itself is more or less just a hook phrase of the movement. Has nothing to do with the overarching goals and ideals that we all have, because there's so many voices being heard, and there's so many people that want to really promote all the big positive values. But in reality, people always look for, questions like, what are they trying to do? What are their goals? What are their demands? But in reality, they don't understand that there are hundreds, if not thousands of people down there trying to push many different goals, many different demands, all of which are problems that are in our society.
Yeah, so last weekend I was with your ex and we kind of got drunk at the bar and one thing led to another. We still cool?
The reason why I don't know what's going on is because I don't necessarily care about the presidential election. In my opinion, all I see is just two assholes at the end, just two assholes running, and you're trying to figure out who's the little asshole compared to the big one. You choose a little asshole, you don't choose a big one. And that's all basically the election is about.
I kind of see what he's saying. I mean, like, I'm an activist and shit. I don't know if I'm gonna vote this year, but generally, like, I'm gonna put our youth into mostly two categories. Obviously, there's other categories, but I'm gonna say most of the youth fall into one of these two categories. One is, like, materialistic and absorbed in their own shit, because there's just so much shit to be, like, absorbed in, whether it's video games, whether it's movies, whether it's clothes, like, whatever. There's so many things to be distracted by in this world that there's no need for a young person to be interested in politics. They can totally find fulfillment in many other places. The other category of young people, generally, is the disaffected, like, what the hell is with this political system? It's obviously not, like, there's no way that I'm gonna really get what I want out of it. There are just two idiots running, and I have to pick which one is less of an idiot. The whole system is broken, everyone's just in it for money, politicians are all corrupt, blah blah blah, the whole system, whatever. And, I'm probably in that second category, generally.
My suggestion, find other students who have had problems with professors, either in the past that you've had, or professors that you're taking now and you're having problems with. And go to your college, either your registrar or some kind of representative that will listen to you. Go as a group and demand justice. Demand to be graded fairly. Demand things. Because colleges don't listen to one person. They'll only listen if we have numbers.
In the first episode, I talked about how there are double standards for men and women fail to realize that. Now, when I say that, I'm particularly talking about younger girls, perhaps 4 or 3 years younger, straight out of high school. With them, all I get is just a bunch of mixed signals. With people who are my age, it's I still get crap, but I mean, they seem to know what they're doing more. They're easier to deal with. But with 18 and 19-year-olds, all I get is more games, more mixed signals, and overall more hell.
I completely disagree with that.
Let's look at Facebook first. You go online, you check your newsfeed, and you see that your friend John Doe just got married to Jane Doe. And then you see at the bottom, 50 people like this. You didn't get the information that one of your best friends got married because they told you. You got it on Facebook. Now, 3 years ago, you might have written on their wall and said, congratulations, you got married. At least you would have done that. But no, now we just basically click the like button, and that's supposed to be a way of appreciating the fact that somebody got married. Something as big as a marriage is good enough for a like button.
So you don't use any of those techniques that you hear, like negging, where it's like negative complimenting, or...
Definitely, I do, but only, it's you have to be very careful with those, because you have to know the girl. I usually don't do them initially, some people do, it's kind of risky, but most of the time, if you get to know the girl, if the girl is insecure with herself, doubts herself, maybe seem a little paranoid or worried about something, it's usually best to avoid negging or, backhanded complimenting, whatever you want to call it, only because it doesn't work as well and they'll probably take it wrong. However, girls that are more confident with themselves, more assertive and or more aggressive, negging them is actually better, because it makes their ideology, makes them think that they're more like to your level or even below, so that they need to catch up to you and they need to earn your respect and earn your attention.
My favorite fictional character is from a cartoon, and I'm proud to admit it. But society looks at it and says, you like to dress up and watch cartoon characters when you're 22 years old? There's something wrong with you. So let me get this straight. If I dress up as something that I'm not, I'm crazy, right? Well, yeah. Unless it's Halloween.
So, why do you think that women are expressed so, you use the word, people use the word bitch to express a woman?
New social standards. The world changes. Everything changes. Words have new meanings. Bitch isn't just a derogatory term anymore. It's now something that's socially acceptable to use among your friends.
What do producers do when the season's winding down and they're running out of ideas for new episodes? Motherfucking cook show! The reason why I'm doing it in this episode is because I want to show what happens to our society when we judge people based on their race. A couple months ago, I came across an article on an online dating site. The online dating site was OkCupid, and the article was called How Your Race Affects the Messages That You Get. This article had calculated a couple things based on the members of its site. The first thing it calculated was people's compatibility to other races based on their own race. As you can see, there are no strong correlations between a person's race and their compatibility to another race. The lowest compatibility percentage in this entire graph is 56%, and the highest is 62%. The next thing it calculated was the response rates of females when a male sent out a message to a female on the site. As you can see, the percentages are much lower. Overall, you can say the average response rate for a male, if they send out a message to a female, regardless of their race, is around 25%. It boggles my mind for people to discriminate for such a moronic, such an idiotic, and overall plain racist reason. My bottom line is just a simple question. Why?
In season 2, I wanted to get more people on my show outside of my immediate social circle, so I bought my own camera. I still use that camera to this day. I'm using it right now. I started using it in episode 16. I interview people on various subjects again, but I felt like after a while that I needed to get other people on, to get people interested in what the blog was about. It wasn't about me talking about something that interested other people. It was about what other people had to say, and that kind of lowered my confidence to the point where I decided that I was going to end the show at episode 30 and focus on my script that I was working on at the time and make it into a short film called The Barrier, which will be showed briefly at the end of this particular season clip show, which that film had moderate success. I mean, it was shown in New York and Italy, but that's not really the point. The point is that at this point in time, I had really, I guess, low confidence in what I had to say. I think my body reflected that. Although I'm not necessarily in good shape right now, I was really bad back then. Kind of hard to watch some of my videos, how big I was, considering how big I was back then. But in any case, here's season 2. Usually, if you are known to overbet when you have a hand that smashes the board, like the K9-4 flop, and you have trip kings, I mean, at that point, you know that you should figure out that the only reason that somebody is calling you is because they know that you have a hand that if they catch up and get a better hand in on the turn of the river, they're going to crush you and they're going to take all your money.
Right.
So they're only calling A because they know that they have you beat, or B because they know that they have a chance to beat you, and if they do, they're going to crush you. So that particular part of overbetting, I mean, I think it's one of the first things that a novice player should realize, because I think a lot of novice players do overbet and find themselves in those pitfalls, and they say, oh, well, poker's just bad luck. Well, no, it's because they read you and they understood your game and they crushed you.
Of course.
Would you suggest somebody who's just getting into poker in general ever to start with Omaha?
No, Omaha is something you have to do. I love Omaha because of the thrills it provides. But no, you definitely should get a hold of Hold'em
Yeah.
No pun intended.
What do you think matters more for each? For example, which matters more for grad school, GPA, work experience, and then which matters more for getting a job, GPA or work experience?
I think in both cases it depends, but let's address the job one first because that's probably the one that I've had the most experience with. When I was first applying to jobs, one of the most frustrating experiences that I had to deal with was that I had no work experience, which is, it's a bit of an interesting dilemma because you're a sophomore and you're not supposed to have work experience. You're supposed to focus only on school, and that's what I did. So you, as a sophomore, have to supplement that with things like extracurricular activities, leadership roles, and things of that nature, which is something that I did have. But that was one of the defining moments in my early college career where I realized that even to get your first job or your first internship experience, you need an experience.
If after a couple of months you've asked for your money back and they haven't said anything, or they just say, well, they give you some bullshit excuse like, oh, I haven't gotten paid yet, well, then it's okay to kick it up a notch and say something like, well, hey, give me my goddamn money. Last year's World Series with the Rangers and Cardinals was
amazing.
Like the best World Series of all time. You would think that would translate into 2012, but not really.
It really hasn't.
So it makes me wonder, because I feel like the NBA is going to thrive beyond LeBron. What is causing baseball to die?
First of all, I think most of the other games like football, basketball, for most regular people, it's a lot easier to watch those games. Mm-hmm. It's more straightforward. Mm-hmm. Whereas baseball, there's so many aspects to the game that if you grab anybody on the street and they don't really watch baseball, to them it's all it is a pitcher holding the ball, waiting forever, throwing a pitch, wait forever. Yeah. Maybe they'll hit it, probably won't.
Yeah.
Because baseball is more about failure than success.
From one cheap person to another, let me tell you that you're doing the right thing. Our economy is shit right now, and it's been that way for years. Why? Because people live beyond their means. A person who can only afford to live in an apartment goes and buys a house, and then their house goes into foreclosure 6 months later because they can't make their payments. Then another person who can only afford to eat out once a month goes out to eat every single week and then wonders why their credit card's been declined when they go out to eat for the 40th week in a row. But if that same person went out to eat with their friends but realized that they couldn't afford anything on the menu and didn't get anything on that menu and was the only one that didn't eat, then they're being cheap. I think that also women have a wall up because, as we all know, men like sex. And it's hard to see for a woman whether or not a man is actually interested in them for them being who they are, or they just want to get in their pants. So do you think that plays a role?
What, that we're horn dogs?
Yeah, that we're horny.
Yeah, I mean, but men are always going to be like that. But I think when it comes to attraction and seduction, you have to come in. If you come in overly aggressive, a woman will know. Mm-hmm. You reek of desperation. Women have this sixth sense, and they can just tell, oh, this dude just wants to get into my pants. Seduction's all about deceiving. You got to be slick about it. So, as I said, listening to a woman, not talking about yourself, not looking desperate, all those things are signs that you're desperate. When you're bragging about yourself, talking about yourself, as you said, you just see her as an object or as a piece of meat, and your tongue is drooling with. Some guys literally have that look on their face, and women sense that. They know that they build these bitch shields up, or they have the defense mechanisms to ward off men. Yeah, because they know they have this kind of power of being hot and beautiful, and they can just reject any man they want.
What I'm talking about is if you're with your friend and you say something like, well, I've gained, a couple of pounds. I mean, I really don't know how I gained it. And they come out of nowhere saying, well, stop eating takeout. Meanwhile, this person weighs 300 pounds and is saying this to you, stuffing their face with shrimp and broccoli and a side of spaghetti. Now, we all give unsolicited advice at some point in our lives, and it's not always a bad thing. I mean, there are some cases where, like in the example I just gave you, even though the guy who's 300 pounds needs to take his own advice and he's not, you can still use his advice because the best way to lose weight is diet and exercise. But to those people who give advice not because it's out of the goodness of their heart, but because they want to be assholes about it and stick it to somebody, I really wonder why you do that. Why do you think that people have like this animosity towards transgender people? Why do you think people are so uptight when the idea of somebody being transgender is, the topic is even brought up?
Mostly because of their beliefs, I'm guessing. I always hear that, if you were born female, stay female. God gave you your body, and you have to live the way He wanted you to live. And I mean, like, religion is a touchy topic anyway, but I mean, that's how I feel. Like, I want to be comfortable in my own body. So does everyone else who's transgender or identifies as transgender. They want to be comfortable with themselves. They don't want to go around and pretend to be someone else.
People need to realize that you can hang out with your friends and meet new people without having to go to a bar. Lots of teenagers try to sneak into bars because they see adults going and they say, well, adults do it, so it must be cool. You guys need to understand what people usually do when they're at a bar, and also what they say when they're at a bar. Usually, people want to talk about how drunk they are, how many drinks that they've had so far in order to get as drunk as they are right now, whether or not they want to play drinking games to get more drunk, or tell you stories about them and their friends in which they've gotten drunk.
People have this sort of mindset when they see people and they got the turkey necks. No, get the vulture neck with in the online chair with their carpal tunnel hands and whatever. And we do other things too. I personally have a 1-year subscription to World of Warcraft right now. I've actually had not so much time to do my World of Warcraft thing so much often anymore. Back in the day, I've done a lot more.
Well, how often do you play like World of Warcraft or just these online games, like per day?
Per day, it depends on what I have going on in my life at the time. So let's start when I first started playing. It was back in high school. I think it was my second year. I used to play every day. I came home. I got online and started doing shit. It's like literally backpack off, clothes hit the floor, fingers on the keyboard and mouse. Okay. Warcraft. And I played maybe 4, 5, 6 hours a day and whatnot. As it went on, over the summer, I didn't really do much but World of Warcraft because my parents didn't let me out. I was kind of sheltered. And it was pretty much, I was just a junkie back then. But as I hit college and upper years of high school, I started having friends, quote unquote, and they started inviting me out places. Well, not really inviting me out, it's just I've had things to do other than just be at home. And I feel like an MMORPG, you have so many friends because they're actual people you're playing with. And when you can commune with someone in real life, for me, it trumps the digital frontier. So,
to me, the ability to speak my mind and say whatever I want is something that's very important to me, because I hate beating around the bush where there's an elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room in this case is the fact that we're slowly losing our freedom of speech. Sure, I mean, we don't have to worry about getting our heads chopped off anymore for speaking our piece, but if we still have to face severe penalties for saying what we want to say, and those penalties aren't really necessary, is it really free speech? Let's say I started work a couple months ago at a new place, and I have no complaints, and my boss is happy with me, I'm doing my job well. A couple months in, my boss sees my video blog and sees the episode where I talk about how Asian females discriminated against black and Spanish males in dating. My boss is an Asian female. Should I worry about my job security? No, but I probably will, because even though that episode, and none of my episodes in fact, have anything to do with my ability to do my job and to do it well, she'll probably be so offended that she'll do her best to fire me. Can you trust somebody again if somebody stabbed you in the back previously? Or is it just like one strike and you're out?
It would take time, to trust them again. For me, you would have to do a lot. I would try, what I do is distance myself and, see, what happens.
Anyway, back to the list. Back to the list.
We're not done with the list?
No.
We're not done with
Now,
this. Oh, God.
This is a little bit what we were talking about before. Flubber butt.
Wake up, people. Not everything has a happy ending. People don't want to think that you can go to sleep one night and never wake up. People don't want to think that you can have a normal day and then all of a sudden you get a call saying that a close friend or family member died. But it's true. In life, just like in baseball, you usually don't end up getting what you want out of it. In baseball, a hitter is considered to be great if they get a hit 30% of the time, which is the same thing as missing 70% of the time. When you go after something, you're usually not going to get it. When you strive for something, you're usually going to fail. And because people fail all the time, because there's so much negativity out there, people need to hold on to the little amount of success that they have or that they can obtain day by day. But what if somebody fails all the time that they to go after something? Who are we to tell them to keep trying?
Don't you realize what you give up when you limit yourself to just Asians?
Well, limit myself? Look who's talking. We've known each other our whole lives, right? I've never seen you go after anyone who wasn't black. Oh, so I guess it's okay to be picky as long as it's with your own kind?
So, I go to a black college. I can relate better to them.
How would you know if you go to a black college? We went to the same high school full of black people, right? Did you see me go after any of the girls there? No, because I wasn't attracted to them. So I go to a college full of Asian girls, and I realize that I prefer Asians. I have a reason to be picky, but you rather die a virgin than date an Asian male when you haven't gotten a chance to know a single one.
So, I guess in your world, getting to know a person is talking to them for 5 minutes and then asking for their number? Of course. And if they say no, you know them well enough to ask them 4 more times, right?
Bitch!
I love you, Joshua!
Season 3 started in 2014, and by that point I had graduated college, and I had gotten really thin. But I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life because I wasn't interested in the subject that I studied in undergrad, which was marketing. And I wanted to go to graduate school, but I didn't know for what. So in the meantime, I decided to bring back my blog and try to make it a little bit more, I guess, official by bringing in some music and, again, getting different perspectives and talking about more relevant issues such as the issues that millennials face when it comes to moving out of their parents' house. But after a while, it lost steam, the blog that is, and I decided to cancel it at episode 40 instead of doing the full 15 episodes. And I did a clip show for another video. But in 2015, I decided to bring it back, just finish off the season, get up to episode 45. And I thought those episodes are pretty good. I thought 45 was hilarious, but I think it was kind of hard to understand what was going on if you weren't in my social circle at the time. So, here it is, season 3. And finally, T. This is what it all comes down to. Train to maintain. Your goal from day one should not be, how am I going to get this weight off now? It's how I'm going to keep this weight off. Nobody wants to go on a crazy diet for 50 days, lose 50 pounds, and then gain 60 in a year. That's counterproductive. There's no point in going on the diet. The point of going on the diet is to make sure that you look good for life. How would I implement this diet system that I'm talking about? Let's start with D. I would start by removing soda right off the bat. Then, get rid of all the situations that you find yourself where you could be tempted to not be on the diet. If you go to parties where you have to drink, or if you have to, you go to a situation that has all this, junk food, like, a little get together somewhere, get rid of that. I'm not saying cut those people off, but in the beginning, it may be best to just kind of steer clear until you have the willpower to be able to say no, until you're in the mindset of the diet. I lost a semester myself. One thing I would suggest if you are a transfer student is to make sure what credits are going to transfer before you transfer colleges, because I learned one thing. I was told that I was going to get all my credits when I transferred, and that was true to an extent, but then they said that it wouldn't fit into the major even though I had the same major. It's just, it's a bunch of craziness. So just make sure that you get all the facts before you choose which college you want to transfer.
But even if you choose a certain college, and in the mindset you want to transfer to another college eventually, the easiest thing to do is, for CUNY, they have a system where you're able to see which classes transfer. So maybe you could take those classes in your college. So by the time you transfer, it's almost guaranteed you'll get everything.
Now, for the sake of argument, let's say you're not like the majority of college students and you're not in massive debt. Let's say you also live in one of the bigger cities in the country. Let's use New York, Boston, and San Francisco as examples for this episode. According to CBSNews.com, the average price for a median studio apartment is $2,000 in Boston, $2,300 in New York, and $2,295 in San Francisco. That translates to these numbers annually. Now let's talk transportation. Let's say you're going to use public transportation to get to work every day because it's cheaper. If you live in New York or Boston, you can get an unlimited monthly card. In San Francisco, you have to pay per each ride. So the number that you see is based off of the average amount that you would spend on a 5-day round trip from home to work over 52 weeks. Regardless of which city you live in, right off the bat, you spent more than half your income on rent and transportation alone. And that's only if your rent includes utilities. Maybe it's a matter of taking that idea and embracing that in the leagues that we have now. Because that's not something that Americans have in their own leagues. Like, for example, the Yankees are always going to be in Major League Baseball at the highest level.
Yeah.
For basketball, like the Boston Celtics and the Lakers are always going to be at the highest level. They're never going to move down. So maybe it's a matter of adapting, not necessarily the sport, but certain elements of that sport. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, dude. You just touched on a really good topic. I just realized that you're right, there is no relegation in MLS. Let's also think too. And there are divisions of soccer here. There's first, there's second, there's third, there's fourth. I play in fourth division soccer here. That's the thing, you can't move up. You can play each other in the US Open Cup, so you can end up playing professional teams. Like fourth division, third division teams can end up playing MLS and second division and ASL. But like you said, you're right, there's no relegation or promotion. So there's also no incentive there. You're right, it's a kind of wacky system. And then they do the whole playoffs thing, which is very American. That's an American concept because no fucking buddy in UEFA does that.
Yeah, it's like a round robin tournament.
Yeah, they do like MLS Cup and MLS playoffs. That doesn't exist in UEFA.
Yeah.
UEFA, there's the domestic cup and the league title. Those are the two things you're fighting for.
On April 15th, 1947, Jackie Robinson became the first black player to play in the major leagues in the 20th century. He was not the first black player to play in the major leagues. A man named Moses Fleetwood Walker played for the Toledo Blue Stockings in the American Association way back in 1884. His brother would also play for the team. 5 years later, an agreement called, the Gentleman's Agreement was established. There was no written rule about this, but essentially all the owners at the time agreed that none of them would ever sign a black player to play for their club. Jackie Robinson, a Hall of Famer, played for the Brooklyn Dodgers from 1947 to the end of the 1956 season, when he retired and was traded to the Giants. At the time, the Giants did not know that Jackie Robinson had decided to retire. Jackie Robinson took a job at a company called Chock full of Nuts, where he had a VP position. He had no interest in playing in baseball after the 1956 season, and his decision to not play for the Giants had nothing to do with the fact that they were the Dodgers' hated rivals. Jackie Robinson gave Horace Stoneham, the owner at the time, a letter stating that he would have enjoyed playing for the Giants, but he had no interest in playing in baseball at that point in time. So what would you suggest the suspension level should be? Because I'm thinking of maybe a full season for the first offense and a lifetime ban for the second offense. I understand the 3-strike rule, but there needs to be some kind of
3 strikes keeping you in the vein of baseball.
Yeah, but I feel like there needs to be some kind of deterrent, and I don't know if three times is enough.
I don't think the current system has a big enough deterrent on it. For the current players, I would say that, and that the veterans. I think it has to be. I think I agree with you. One time offense, you're out for a season. Second time, you're done. Third time, you pay. you give MLB the money because fuck you.
What's the difference between killing an animal for food and killing an animal for pleasure?
Killing an animal for food is okay as long as you're not being wasteful. And killing an animal for pleasure, is just not okay in my book.
Let's say the rules would state that an animal can only be killed for food and for not being wasteful, like you said. Couldn't somebody just shoot a pigeon and then when a cop came said that, well, I was going to eat this, when it was kind of obvious that they were doing it because they were hunting for pleasure? And if so, how do you get through that loophole?
I mean, you can make certain laws that delegates, like if certain populations are too high, then you could say, yes, you can kill this one animal for your hunting pleasure. But if it's like a rare animal that you're hunting just for the hell of it, that's not okay.
The most I ever spent, I think, was on some white kicks, just Nike, nothing too special. 150 maybe, I think, but I think that was one time. I didn't pay over 100 any other time. For you, what were the most expensive pair of sneakers?
Most expensive pair was, I believe, only $330, which...
Only,
yeah, I know. So that's the thing. To me, it's only because I know how much there's sneakers that go for $7,000. When you really look at how crazy the prices can get for some sneakers, like it seems like such a small amount, you know?
For me, like there was a time I messaged a girl a couple months ago. Some kind of show that she had that I was something in common with. I don't know, Big Bang Theory, something weird. I was like, hey, what do you think about this show and this character, the season going on so far? Nothing too big. And she replies back, I kid you not, she says, you look funny. Do you have a weird dick? I like guys with weird dicks.
I'm sure she's just one of those weird girls who just says weird things on OkCupid because there's just a barrage of men attacking them and just sexually assaulting them verbally through OkCupid. So they just say weird shit. I've encountered a bunch of those. I had a girl tell me she was gonna day rape me and harvest my organs.
I think she was serious.
I do that a lot, honestly. I just troll a lot on at least OkCupid. I don't have my OkCupid profile anymore. But back when I did, I would say 90%, yeah, like 90% of my messages, 9 out of 10, were just me like trolling a girl. It wasn't serious.
Most of the messages I sent out just happened to be like a joke about that profile. She goes, the most private thing she's willing to admit is what's Gmail? I said, I think Gmail might be government mail or something like that. Not sure though, I might have to Google it. And,
so what's your success rate on here?
0.
So you got this great idea for a short film, better yet, a feature film. And you think that this film is going to be so great that it's going to be a big blockbuster in Hollywood. You're sitting on a gold mine. So let's get started and start shooting, right? Bong! Hey, AngelDodger. Yeah, I got nothing to talk about today. You want to see some bloopers?
My friend's waiting for me outside. I gotta go.
You're Sue Chin, right?
So I guess for you, you're saying that being around positive people is being around people who can push you, but also keep you grounded. It's not just about like just saying, oh, you can achieve whatever you want.
That's right.
Because that's what I always assumed it to be. Being around positive people is just like people who can, who have achieved what you want to achieve and can just blindly tell you you can achieve what you want with no sense of like direction.
You will not trust people if they always guide you blindly. Those people you won't trust.
Yeah.
You're not dumb. Nobody's dumb. But it's like getting those mentors that will tell you, okay, this is great, but here's my suggestions, right? Or they will ask you questions. They will listen to you. They will do whatever they can in their, power to see where your mind's set and give you feedback on things that maybe you haven't seen yet. Or, maybe they'll give you suggestions where you could get there, better or faster, or they'll refer you to another person who is more of an expert, right? So people who just guide you blindly, I don't know, I don't even see it as positive people. I just see them as people who don't care about you,
How do you deal with temptation? Because you said, okay, I want to, I have this idea of what I want to eat, and stuff like that. But let's say you go out to a bar, how do you deal with that?
That is an interesting question. I feel like there's a time and a place for everything. And, I have a fight coming up, February 20th, I have a fight coming up. And so now is definitely not the time to cheat. And the way I deal with that is I'm going to get my ass kicked if I do cheat. So that's a pretty good motivating factor.
Yeah.
But I'm also a firm believer in order to keep a good diet, you must cheat on your diet. just like treating yourself every once in a while. There's nothing wrong with treating yourself with like a snack or a junk food or something. You know, it feels good. You know, they say like there are foods that are good for your body and there's foods that are good for your soul. And the ones that are good for your soul is, you know, the junk foods, the food the comfort food.
Yeah.
And as long as you just do it like that once in a while, like there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with like having a cookie once a week, or like if you're that intense about it, like once a month. You know, you can make it like a holiday for yourself, like every once a month. You know, like, oh, today's my cheat day. All right, I'm gonna go grab my favorite snack. I'm gonna go grab a Big Mac.
One cookie though a week? One cookie? Like,
yeah, you know, it depends on how strict your diet is.
Yeah, I guess it
You can have a
depends.
slice of cake, you know, whatever. It's not gonna kill you as
A
long as you don't
slice.
have that slice of cake every single day.
Yeah.
Do you feel as though in our lifetime we're ever going to get to a point where we can just look at an interracial couple and not think twice about it? Like it's just whatever.
On a personal level? No.
Why not?
I just feel like as long as we're humans, as long as we have free will and just barriers, you know, whether or not they be big or small socially or just family, you know, at a family level, there's always going to be people whose eyebrows get raised when they see an interracial couple, you know. I feel like we're getting a lot further away from how we used to be, you know, to where these people aren't being targeted on the streets and beaten, you know, just because they're seen walking together. We're definitely heading in the right direction, but I truly think that it'll never reach a point fully to where everybody just accepts it without saying nothing, you know? It's getting there, but I don't think we'll ever really, you know, climb up that last hurdle.
I think black and white has made a lot of progress.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain ones that are very slow because of cultural stuff. Like I just think that type of relationship is progressing.
Mm-hmm.
I just think like other ones might still be progressing, but like a lot slower.
Like almost a standstill.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be so much cultural or like racial intermixing eventually to the point where you're not going to be able to distinguish who's who, where you're pretty much going to be forced to get along. Well, not forced, but you know, because of we're so mixed with so many different bloodlines and everything, you have no choice really but to, you know, say, look, I can't be more superior than this person because we all look alike, you know, so that's why I'm saying, yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and that's what kills me, is the fact that not only do they make those signals, but they get mad if we don't understand them. It's been proven that men don't know what the fuck women want. So why would you make it more confusing by giving them signals?
Going back to like the men thing really quick, the one thing I don't like, well two, with the thirstiness is one, you follow me in your fucking car, like you know me. No,
you know it was me?
Damn it. No, like you fucking follow me in my car and you're like, hey yo ma, like hey baby, and I'm just sitting there like,
yo ma.
Like I don't fucking know you, like I'm not your friend, like I'm not your pal, you know, like get the fuck out of my face.
I will say this.
Don't follow me home.
I will say this.
Or like you start whistling at me.
Anytime a guy does that, it's never serious. Because I do that just
most of the time.
It's just funny to
like
do
you
sometimes.
just follow me down the block and you're like,
It's just funny to
you're not
scare
like whistling at me and shit.
Hey, yo, ma.
Put it this way, what can I do other than have this woman slip and fall on top of me and just start fucking me to not be thirsty? To not fucking be thirsty on some level. I feel like there's thirst in everybody, but to be thirsty, there's different levels. It's like, listen, I can show, you know, my throat is itchy, let me get a couple words. But there's motherfuckers that are like, bring in the fucking truck and just don't.
I've struggled with thirst all my life. Most people have. The only things I can tell you is to be very self-aware. Don't overstep boundaries. If you're gonna stalk, don't hurt anybody. We gotta be realistic here. People are gonna stalk. People are gonna hit on people who have boyfriends and girlfriends and all these things. Be respectful of people's space. Try not to do anything too malicious, but try to keep true to yourself too, because we all have these biological needs we have to meet. Sometimes we just need to talk to that girl. We need to call her. We need to know who she is. All right, we need to jerk off to her pictures.
Please, you know what is your final thought? By the end of the third season, I started taking classes at Harvard Extension School in the hopes of getting into their Master's in Journalism program, the program that I'm in right now. The return to school
got me interested once again into doing AngelDodger. But instead of focusing on my immediate friends like I did in the first season, or expanding to people that I know a little bit less, but I kind of know in my second and third season, I decided to reach out to other YouTubers because I thought talking to people on various issues, or talking to people about various issues who were also on YouTube would get interests up on my channel. But that's not what happened. What did happen, though, was a pretty tragic event at that point in time, at the end of the fourth season, or by the end of the fourth season. And that is reflected by episode 60. I think for a long time I wanted to talk about racist Asian women and yellow fever and the hypocrisy behind yellow fever, but I was afraid of the backlash that I would receive for calling it out and calling Asian women out. But that event, which I'm not going to get into, but it was pretty bad, kind of made me get sick and tired of dealing with racist Asian women and their hypocrisy when they call out men for their dating preferences, but they clearly aren't interested in black and Hispanic men. I don't think that I was really at the level that I'm at right now in terms of being just really not caring what Asian women think about what I have to say, but you could start to see the shell crack by the end of the fourth season. So here it is.
I've got to take it further! No! Goku! Times 4!
You obviously think that networking is very important, rightfully so. How do you build on those skills? Do you feel like it's something that you have to continually work on? And if so, how do you do that?
What I do is to build on these skills is I force myself to do it, you know, and I know it's kind of hard for some people to be like, you know what, I gotta actually go out and do stuff. But to make it easy is if you're in an environment where you're around like-minded people, you won't think twice about starting a conversation about, you know, that particular topic. You know, say we're at a convention for YouTubers, you know, and it's going to feel natural just to go ahead and talk like, oh, you YouTube? I YouTube too, you know, so what's going on? What do you do? And that's where it gets to, you know, that's where it becomes easier for you. And to speak to the people that feel like they're, I guess, introverts and not, you know, kind of shy a little bit, you're gonna have to network. I mean, that's just what it is. You're just gonna have to go ahead and take a deep breath and talk. You're just gonna have to do that, especially if you want to spread your message around.
Do you feel equal, like in the workplace? Do you feel equal, you know, in society? Do you feel like, I mean, if not, you feel like you're close to equal, or?
It's hard to describe. For me, yes, it's equal. But I also, you know, either work in fashion or right now, currently, a lot of my time is spent promoting and for the public relations of like gay nightlife. Obviously, I'm in a culture where I'm very much accepted, if not the majority of. If you know, it's either we're girls or you know we're gay guys, and you know, it's kind of a place where I think, luckily, it's very much accepted. However, I have a lot of friends in finance, for example, and a lot of them will tell me, well, it's not like the company in and of itself has a problem with gays, but once you come out, there seems to be a certain glass ceiling that people can't ever get through. Like they'll become the VP, but never the president.
I mean, just to add to that point, instead of doing what you think is acceptable to get what you want, which will be women in this case, you do what you want, and then the woman will come to you.
Yes, thank you.
Or you find a way to get them to come to you.
Absolutely. And you always find a way, because as we said, a weak inner game is the guy who, again, is coming up to them saying, oh, well, I own this, I own that. And those guys, let me tell you something about those, you know, well-to-do guys that keep doing that. I own this, I own that, I work for such and such company. Those guys are using money as a cover-up for their insecurities that they never had the time to resolve.
Well, why is it that? Why do you think that it is that private school teachers get paid less?
That's a good question. I am not sure, because I know the level of work I do is more than I would be doing at a public school, but it all has to do with the way the money from parents gets funneled into the school for different things, because it's not directly going to teachers' paychecks. and tuition that they have to pay gets spread out amongst a bunch of different things, especially when it's an organization that is built, when it's an organization that's like inside itself that doesn't take money from other places. It relies on that for like everything. It relies for all the salaries, for expanding the school, for projects, for supplies of all different kinds. And so when you're getting that amount of money and you have to give it to a whole staff, and you also have to provide for the school in a bunch of different ways, and for the space as well, and for all the kids, it turns to be really, really small amount for everything.
Yeah, I do enjoy blogging, even though not a lot of people watch, which is one of the drawbacks, and that's what I want to discuss for a second. Another drawback that I have is trying to get people on. You have to deal with cancellations, people losing interest and stuff like that, and that does get quite annoying sometimes, considering the effort that I put in. But even with that in mind, the stuff that I've done and the increase in quality that you can see from season 1 to now, I think shows that there is some value to this video blog. And as I continue going forward with it, I hope you watch and I hope you enjoy what I have to present, because I do work hard on it. The people who are involved work hard on what they have to say, and I appreciate their time in coming on. And I hope you appreciate it as well. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.
It's been a really offensive word for years and years and years now, and it will remain so. And I'm fully behind the idea that as a whole, as the world, if we want to get rid of the word, I'm totally behind that and agree with that. And ultimately what I feel now is that if anybody's going to use it, then we should all use it. It's a word, it's English. If we're saying that one group of people shouldn't say it, then why should anybody say it?
I really do think that the context of the word and what it means is really up to the African American community. What is your overall opinion on the friend zone? Does it exist?
I believe a friend zone can exist, but if you don't want to be in the friend zone, then there's a simple answer: just don't be their friend. I've had many cases and many friends that many girls that I've been friends with for a while, and then eventually I would tell them that, oh, I like you, and they would realize, oh, I like you too, but it was kind of, the timing was off, they're with someone else now. And so a lot of the friends that I dated, I guess we're more in friend zone now because we can't really date because they're with someone and I'm with someone else. So I think friend zone exists in some way, but it also doesn't exist. I don't know. It is a weird question to me. But I think my overall take is that you can definitely get out of the friend zone by not being friends with someone.
Do you think that you should just send one resume and just send it out to as many places that are relevant as possible? Or should you tailor your resume to each particular company that you're going towards and try and customize it if that's...
That is an excellent question that you asked. I know that maybe a lot of people feel like, oh wow, this is so much work, but I think it might be worth your time to tailor it to each company, because each company is looking for different things, and one general resume will not make it stand out. It might stand out for one, but it might not stand out for all the other ones. So I would definitely say put in the time, look at what they're looking for, look at the job description and see what kind of things, what kind of skills they're looking for, and then tailor it based on what you have in terms of the work experience.
In my blog, I cover a number of topics. Sometimes I cover them on my own, other times I cover them with friends and other YouTubers. What if the female wants to keep the baby but the man does not?
Then that's a tricky situation. Whew. I don't know, because it's like if the guy really does not, if the guy doesn't want to keep the baby and the female does, again, that's something they're going to hash out. And I know that sounds like a cop-out answer. It really depends on the situation, because there are some situations where females want to keep the baby but the guy doesn't, and there's really not much you can do about it. And then I mean, there are instances where, actually, some of these were in the news, where like there was a lady, she had a kid, and the guy found out, she wanted to keep it, and the guy kicked her down the flight of stairs and beat the crap out of her to try to get her to force her to abort the baby when she didn't. So it's like, again, it's like, what do you do? So, but I mean, I didn't even think of it from that angle. I was really thinking of it from a female's perspective. So it really just, again, it depends.
Well, I'll give you my take, which is more clear cut. I mean, you did open my mind for a second. I thought about, what if it was rape? But I was going to originally say, because I was thinking more of the respective relationships, that it's equal.
Yeah, it's a 50-50 say.
It has to be that both parents want it. A lot of people look at abortions as like the worst thing in the possible world, but I mean, is it ethically any worse than giving up a child that you know that you never... I mean, like, having a child that you know that you're not going to take care of and giving it up for adoption? I just, made my move and I took my L. And that's really all you can do at that point. Be ready to take your L if you're going to go.
I gotta agree. Take that fucking L right to the dome. All right, you're gonna play this game. You're gonna fucking. This is worse than League of Legends. You're taking L's left and right, bro. That's it. You're fucking done.
Affirmative action isn't about the majority, which is what they think they have in their head. This is me not getting a job. It's not about you. It's about us.
Yeah.
They need to understand that. No one cares about this. Stop thinking about it's about you. You're just like an outlier. You're not a main character in this situation. You're in the scene. You're in the back. Hopefully you remain in the back for as long as you can, because we're tired of you being in the forefront. But it's not about you. It's about whoever is benefiting from whatever affirmative action cause it is.
And again, it doesn't hurt you that bad. You're gonna be able to find something else easier than somebody who's a minority. I mean, there are alternatives out there. Are you really saying that you don't want to have any type of bias be put against you? You want to feel like, if you feel like this, if you're white, for example, and you feel like this affirmative action is going to hurt you in any way, and that offends you, welcome to our world. What is your overall opinion on feminism? What is it to you?
Like, what defines feminism?
Exactly.
Feminism applies to the right for women to stand equal to men, and I think that men and women, ideally in an idealistic world, should be treated equally with equal rights, equal pay, equal responsibility. It goes without saying, and I think that the first wave feminism kind of introduced the women's right to vote, and over time, feminism has kind of become more and more embroiled in political and social issues. And over time, it has deviated from being a cause to promote women's well-being to more so a subgroup of political activism with its own variations.
So it's kind of morphed into something else.
It's morphed into something else. I believe very strongly, like I have two sisters, I stand very firmly behind the ideal that women should be treated equally. I'm against rape. I'm against any violence against women. But at the same time, as feminism stands now, I don't think it's quite so much just about that as it is also promoting political agendas.
What is your take on the idea that a guy is still expected to pay for the entire date? Do you agree with that?
I do not agree with that. I actually recently did a video on that because women now are so, I'm a feminist and equal rights, but when it comes to, dating, they expect a guy to go ahead and pay. And I feel like even on the first date, I always feel like a woman should pay for something. Anytime when I've always gone out on a date, I pay for something. Even if it's like the movies, I pay for snacks. I just feel like if we're gonna be talking about feminists, and I'm not even a feminist, okay? I just believe that this is just me just thinking. I feel like men or women should be equal, and if you're gonna talk about it, then your actions should show that as well. So if you go on a date, then yeah, you should pay something too. Don't just use the feminism when you want to.
Today I'd like to recite the lyrics of Little B.
Swagged up nigga and I came fucking bitches. Young base god fucked your bitch cause it's nothing. Young base god nigga swag to the maximum. 7th Street nigga, and I came for the bitches.
This is rap.
It really depends on the family that you come from. For example, I mean, in my family, my cousin who's Chinese, her husband is Mexican, and so my nephew is half Chinese and half Mexican. So I see that Asian Hispanic mix very closely. It's in my family, and so, and you know, it just depends on the area that you grow up in. Because if you're an Asian and you grow up in a Hispanic area, obviously you're gonna end up dating somebody because you find somebody that you like, and it's not because of a racial preference or not. It's just because of proximity. In terms of in general, if you want me to speak stereotypically, but I can't say that it's true or not. I can see how Asians don't usually date Hispanics or blacks, but I would see it as almost as, well, do you think white people don't date Hispanic and black as well? Or do you think that's okay?
I think that there are certain races that have, all different races have different racial preferences. And like, for example, would I see an Indian person date a black guy? Or an Indian girl date a black guy, or an Indian guy date a black girl? I think that would be extremely rare. But because of my preference, I only see the Asian side.
But I think if you can generalize, it comes down to culture. You know, I think a lot of Asian Americans naturally want to date Asian Americans just because you want to, there's a comfort, right? In dating someone who has a similar culture as you, similar background or something like that. I don't know, it's probably just because I'm in LA and we're so diverse and open here, but I'm sure that plenty of other places there's a bigger divide.
I love Asian girls.
I mean, who are people gonna listen to? Like, I'm an Asian woman telling you the struggles of an Asian woman, you know? And here you are saying that, oh, it's not objectifying. It's not demeaning to Asian women when you're obviously not an Asian woman. Like, I mean, as an Asian woman and being raised and being sexualized by society and being shown in movies and media that we're pretty much just, we're either over sexualized or hypersexualized or like the prude or just there's no middle ground. And for you to have that mindset, that yellow fever, even throwing the term around, is just, it sets us nowhere. It moves Asian women nowhere. And I'm pretty sure you have a lot of Asian friends and like a lot of Asian girls that you know or whatever that you're pretty cool with, it's a lot of Asian people don't understand because we're very close-minded. A lot of us are close-minded, but a lot of people are close-minded. But your mindset, that yellow fever mindset, and saying that I only like Asian girls, it's putting us back. It's putting Asian women back. This is the reason why there's Fresh Off the Boat is literally on TV just now. When was there was like the last sitcom where the whole big Asian family was on TV.
Can't think of it.
There are rarely any Asian people on TV. It's because we're hypersexualized, undersexualized, like the model minority. Like throwing these stereotypes around and throwing these phrases and these cute slang, vernacular, or whatever the fuck around. It's getting Asian women nowhere, and it's honestly it's not even cute. It's not cute. If someone just told me, hey, I like Asian girls, yikes, what if someone just went up to you and just said, hey, I like half black and half Mexican guys?
I would love that. By the time season 5 rolled around, my life had completely changed. Pretty much all of it has to do with what happened in 2015. And my blog reflects that, as all the people that I used to interview who were in my social circles in the first couple seasons up until season 4, they're not in season 5 or 6. That's not a coincidence. But what did change as well was not just who I interviewed, but the interest in what I had to say. That Harvard video that I put up in episode 65, I had no idea it was going to be as popular as it was. I mean, certainly covering Harvard in any way is going to get people interested, but that video gave me confidence in terms of knowing that if I put out good content that was worth watching, people were going to find it. If people like me doing investigative work, and the investigations that I did, and it was worth watching, they were gonna approve of it. And that's something that I didn't really feel for a long time. I once again felt like I had to rely on other people to get people interested in what I had to say overall. I didn't think that what I had to say was important to anybody up until that point. But episode 65 told me otherwise. And it, on top of what happened to me in 2015, gave me the confidence to eventually cover what I would ruthlessly cover in the most recent episodes that I've done. But before we get to that, let's look at season 5 and the various topics and somewhat, in some cases, questionable people that I talked to.
I spent my life pushing myself to be the strongest, and now I learn there's a power level I'll never reach on my own. And I hate that.
Help them through it if they're having an episode at that time. Like, hug them, tell them it's going to be okay, and just kind of comfort them at that moment.
Medication, I think, would be the last straw. I think the best thing to fight depression is to actually do something productive with your life. You got to keep moving. If you stay still, you're going to be in that same spot thinking about why you're depressed. If you go out there and mingle, meet friends, possibly join some kind of club, a fitness gym, that things help you take your mind off of what's keeping you down and what's keeping you reverting back to the old you. You got to just change yourself and reevaluate your life and, move forward.
Made their day, like you can build people up, you can tear them down. Just being that, looking like you're happy, it spreads happiness to so many people, because people are affected by how you are. And the best way to me to make my depression go away is to help others and make their lives more meaningful. Because you never realize what a good compliment can do for someone. They could be on the brink. Most people with depression are very silent. They're happy people. But when you just project your positivity and happiness on others a little bit with your simple action with your friends, like say, hey man, you're doing really good, or you're doing awesome. Just at anything. Just letting them know that they're a positive experience in your life, it'll greatly affect their depression.
You just got to give it time. You just can't say, oh, you're going to get over it. Because that's not the case. That's not showing any type of empathy. And you're not being very, you're not attending to their needs. You're pretty much being selfish yourself because you're telling someone to get over it when they really can't because they're caught up in a moment. Depression has its stages and it takes time, and you have to take time with it.
Just don't let it consume you. I've had so many friends that had depression, and they ended up letting it consume them, and they killed themselves. And that's one of the heartbreaking things about it, is sometimes people let it consume them and they don't have the chance to try to control it. People need to do their research on it and stop blaming us for these feelings that we're having.
Okay, so what is feminism?
What is it's the belief that women and men have equal status, equal rights. There shouldn't be any discrimination based on gender.
And why is it necessary?
Well, if you look at other parts of the world where it isn't, where it's dramatically not, like Saudi Arabia, some other countries, you can see how if females are not given equal status, then you can discriminate against anybody. Mm-hmm. It's like it just opens the door for discrimination for anybody, for one human being to be better or more valued than another. Mm-hmm. And you can have differences. We're not saying men and women aren't different, but if you allow access to all kinds of regular human things based just on gender, then you're setting the stage, and this is what happens for
all kinds of discrimination and dehumanization.
Is the death penalty, in any circumstance, a humane way to punish somebody?
Well, the Death Penalty Information Center doesn't take a position on that issue.
Okay.
But what I can tell you is that with United States public opinion is very interesting. Folks were asked by YouGov what their opinions were about methods of execution. And 2/3 of Americans thought that lethal injection was not cruel and unusual punishment, but they thought that every other method of execution was. So we know that people in the United States are deeply troubled about ways in which the states go about executing people. Now that begs the ultimate question about whether the death penalty is ever justifiable and ever humane. And I think that there's growing opposition in the United States to the death penalty, some of it on moral grounds and some of it on practical grounds. But as Pope Francis very recently said, there's no such thing as a humane execution. And we've seen botched executions in the last couple of years with essentially experimental drugs, drugs that were there were never any medical tests done to determine whether they could be administered in a swift and painless way, and it's unethical to do that. And as a result of that, we had 3 very seriously botched executions. In one case, Joseph Wood took 2 hours to die in Arizona. We had Clayton Lockett taking 45 minutes to die in Oklahoma, and we had an execution of Dennis McGuire in Ohio that took 26 minutes. All of them considered botched executions. And then you had the case of Oklahoma being supplied the wrong drugs and executing Charles Warner in violation of its own law, and almost executing Richard Glossop in violation of its law. So people have lost a lot of confidence in the ability of states to carry this out in a humane way, and I think that has joined with the questions of innocence, of race discrimination in the application of the death penalty, and economic discrimination, and has led to significant loss of support for the death penalty across the United States.
What made you decide to become a professional poker player? It was never really a conscious decision. I started playing poker for fun with friends in college. I went to school at the University of California at San Diego, which was close to the Indian casinos, so occasionally I'd go play. Slowly I started learning about the game just from playing at the tables. I got better and gradually moved up stakes. On the day I graduated college, I literally flew to Vegas to play in a World Series of Poker event and never really looked back. One thing just led to another. So you've asked the person out and they've said yes, but you're not done yet because you're not in a relationship with them just yet. What are some signs that a particular date is thinking about or is planning to put you in the friend zone?
Well, if you're dating someone casually and you haven't gotten intimate, or you're just hanging out and you're just not seeing each other that frequently, or especially not Friday and Saturday nights, weekends are sacred, then there's a possibility that you're being moved to the friend zone. The other thing is, if you have a relationship with someone and they send you a cute good morning text every morning, and they check in with you during the day, and they say sweet dreams in a text message at night, and those text messages are happening less frequently, somebody's pulling away, and they may be headed towards the friend zone.
The formation of Harvard Extension School is important to understand. Many people confuse Harvard Extension School with Harvard College, but they are not the same. However, they are both a part of Harvard University, which has 12 schools that offer degrees. You can think of Harvard College, the school that was formed in 1636, as the original Harvard. It is the one that most people associate with Harvard University, as it is the oldest Harvard school. It is the school that most 18-year-olds are screaming about when they receive an acceptance letter from Harvard. Graduate schools such as Harvard Law School, Harvard Business School, and Harvard Medical School are not as old as Harvard College, but they are usually just as competitive to get into as the college itself, and with that, are considered just as prestigious. In a way, these schools are all brothers and sisters, and Harvard University is the parent. With this analogy, Harvard Extension would be the adopted child of Harvard University. Considering its history, the school would be not necessarily blood related, but still considered to be part of the Harvard family. Well, sort of. When it comes to the autism spectrum disorder, how does Asperger's fall into that? Is it a lesser form? Is it related at all?
People with Asperger's have generally a reasonable level of language, but they still have the same social challenges, same behavioral issues. It's generally considered to be a mild form of autism. The new diagnostic manual, DSM-5, lists it includes it as just part of autism spectrum disorders. The difference is just in the language ability primarily.
What about marijuana possession? In some cases, it can be a felony depending on the state. Let me just put an example out there. This isn't necessarily the law, but I just want to put this out there. In New York State, let's say you can carry 6 ounces of weed and it wouldn't be considered a felony, but in New Jersey it is. So a person walks around with 6 ounces of weed and goes to New Jersey and is caught there and is charged with a felony. Now they serve their time and they get out, but a felony on their record is going to make it hard for them to get a job, in which case the cycle of drug dealing continues. They're going to have to go back to selling drugs. Is that really fair? Should we have marijuana possession in any case be a felony? And if not, what should we do about it?
In most states now, they have decriminalized simple possession of marijuana. I would tell you nationally, in the federal prison system, only 1/3 of 1% of prisoners are there for simple possession, and normally they plea bargain down to call it simple possession, and on average they had 115 pounds of marijuana in possession, which is not for personal use, obviously it's for dealing. I think that drug dealing is a felony in my opinion. I'm a big proponent of rehabilitation and treatment. I would just tell you that it's anybody that thinks that's easy is wrong. The difference between being a drug addict and trying to get clean, it's better never to get there. We need to focus on prevention, but we need to try to rehabilitate people that are in prison. So if they get clean and get out, that they have a future, and it behooves us to do everything we can to see that they get one. Like for a long time, students, they got caught smoking pot in high school, then they couldn't get a student loan. That's ridiculous. The only thing I would add is if they get a student loan, then they have to submit to drug testing to make sure that they're doing their part in the equation.
What does a particular day in the industry look like?
I don't think there's a cookie cutter day, because although I am an adult film, I cam a lot from home, I have days off. So a typical shoot day, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I live in San Diego. I don't live in LA, where the majority of the shooting happens. So usually if I have a call time that's early in the morning, it means I'm getting up even earlier in San Diego to make the 2-3 hour drive to LA. I get my hair and makeup done if I haven't done it already. I do all my legal paperwork and check in. I meet my other talent. We check each other's tests, or the producer or production assistant will show our tests to each other. And then we're told, this is the scene, these are the acts that you need to perform, this is the runtime, these are the positions, and go. And there may be cuts in between positions, but overall that's pretty much it. And after, we get the pop shot if it's a boy-girl scene, or we get the allotted content if it's not a boy-girl scene. We shower up, get paid, and then go home, and that's pretty much it. There's a lot of sitting in traffic. I think I spend the majority of my work day sitting in traffic than being on set some days, which is crazy. If it's like a feature film when it's an all-day thing with a bunch of different scenes, then I'll spend more time actually at work. But a typical shoot pure content day for, like, say, like a subscription site. I'm in traffic a lot more than I'm working.
So do you guys consider yourselves men's rights activists or something less? Where do you guys fit on that spectrum?
There's a lot of lingo out there, and words mean different things to different people. I actually think the word feminism has been used in several different ways. And I don't want to talk extensively about that. I can explain briefly what I mean. But basically, there's such a range of viewpoints, and there are what's called men's rights activists out there who have a wide variety of viewpoints. And for me, like, I mean, I've been doing this I've been in NCF, I've been a board member of NCFM for 21 years now. I'm the longest standing board member. And for me, I would quit today. And in fact, that was never changed. I would quit today if I got to a point where I felt like we were advocating for anything giving an advantage of one side over the other. So I don't really care I shouldn't say I don't care. I don't really know what the whole range of what's called men's rights activists are doing. And as the internet proliferates, it gets harder and harder to keep up with what everyone's up to and what terminology can migrate and broaden and change. So it's much easier not to talk about terminology, but just to talk about what we believe in and what we do. I mean, that's really a much easier discussion.
My next question focuses on the catcalling piece that was put out about in 2014, where a woman showed herself getting hit on by a bunch of men in New York City for 10 hours. I think that that's a great example of what the feminist movement has become, which is just, we focus on the few bad apples, explode on that, or just like sensationalize it. And if a guy does the same thing in the sense of putting up a video where he gets rejected by a bunch of females, that just gets ignored because it doesn't matter to them. Is that how you see the feminist movement at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have to resort to propaganda in order to make their points. And not only was that Hollaback video 12 hours in New York, not only was it edited in a completely misleading way, it was completely and utterly racist too. I mean, they spent most of the time is video edited from a couple blocks in Harlem, I believe. And they just took all of these, the men who are lowest on the social ladder, which is mostly poor black men who don't have, and Hispanic men who don't have the kind of assets that typically attract women. Now, if you went to, say, a rich area of Harlem or where there's lots of rich black men, I guarantee you that woman wouldn't have objected in any way to those men commenting on her physical appearance. And most of them didn't even comment on her physical appearance. They said hello. They just fucking said hello. So men are in this impossible double bind that you are required to move first. I think I can link you to a study that shows that upwards of 90% of women prefer men to make the first move socially. They don't really want to take on the psychological burden of rejection, right? Jane Austen has a very famous line in one of her novels that men have the privilege of choosing and women have the privilege of refusing. And psychologically, that's a nice place to be in. I mean, it takes a lot. I don't think a lot of women understand that all men are under pressure to work up the guts to go and present themselves to women with the possibility of being rejected. Like, no, I don't want to go out with you. No, I reject you. No, I want nothing to do with you. And what women are looking for typically is money. Most women still insist on dating or marrying or having relationships with men who are more financially successful than they are. Women don't look down. Men very commonly do, it doesn't matter, but women typically don't. So men at the lowest end of the socioeconomic ladder, the ones on the bottom rung, still have to move first, and they don't have anything to offer women. This comes out very frequently as a kind of aggressive pursuit on the street. It's almost like they're mocking the fact, like they understand they're going to be rejected, so they turn it into a game and they turn it into, it's almost like, there is a little bit of malevolence and anger there, but it's perfectly understandable, and it doesn't come from the fact that men just hate women. I think this is men expressing their frustration at being stuck in that bind. See, here's the key thing about feminism. It's taken away all of the obligations from women. All the traditional gender obligations from women have been torn up and removed. Most of the gender obligations for men are still in place. You are still expected to behave like traditional men while women just do whatever the hell they want. That's not equality.
In terms of doing the interviews, I suggest using Skype, and the reason why is because shooting outside in and of itself is a hassle. You have to deal with wind, you have to deal with other outside factors, and if you don't have a mic, which you probably don't, it's going to be a pain in the ass to deal with outside weather. Also, it's an extra reason why people won't take you seriously or will just drive you nuts, because if you have to meet at a certain location rather than doing a Skype interview where you're home and they're home, they're going to take their sweet time most likely to meet you. They're going to drag on the actual interview being done, and you don't need to deal with that. Your time is precious. So take away any reason why it would make it harder for them to do the interview. So what was the root cause of it? Was it one issue? Was it many different issues?
By this, you mean climate change?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, the primary cause is the emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere by industrial activity. So the global warming, climate change, whatever you want to call it, is caused by certain heat-trapping gases keeping warmth that would normally escape into the upper reaches of the atmosphere down here around us, sort of enveloping us in warmth. The primary greenhouse gas right now is carbon dioxide, and that is the primary emission from the burning of fossil fuels. So, in the last 150 years since the Industrial Revolution, people have been emitting exponentially more and more and more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So, I mean, the uptick in warmth and the uptick in emissions of carbon dioxide has been traced by, a vast majority, 99% of scientists studying the issue. So we pretty much know that it's human industrial activity that's driving it.
Let's say you are addicted, no questions asked. Does recovery actually help? Because I've also learned that sometimes it's not so much the rehab, but it's the environment that you find yourself in, and rehab takes you out of that environment. And once you go back to your regular life, you're put right back into your old environment, so you get back on the horse, if that's right, if it's on or off the horse. But my point is, does recovery actually help?
Okay, so you're asking about recovery, and when I think recovery, I don't automatically think rehab. Okay. Although rehab can be very helpful, especially for people who cannot stay away from the substance. Mm-hmm. As you pointed out, it takes them away from the substance, and it also takes them away from the people with whom they used or drank. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's particularly helpful for, say, heroin addicts who can't stop banging heroin, and they know where to get it. And especially for heroin addicts, I mean, for alcoholics, you can be an alcoholic, you can be a binge drinker alcoholic and not really be physiologically dependent on alcohol. But when you're a heroin addict, you're physiologically dependent. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can chip, but still the drive to use is so much more powerful. And then the ancillary behaviors, I mean, for example, alcoholics report that it's difficult to go to parties because they can't see wine glasses, or they can't hear the clink of ice cubes in the glass, or whatever. That reminds them. So these habits become inscribed in our neurology. Okay, and when we go to treatment, which is one form of recovery, those stop, and we have time to inscribe new behaviors and new habits that counteract those old ones that reminded us of using and drinking. Mm-hmm. But what I wanted to say is that from all of I've written about addiction and recovery for 6.5 years, and I've been in recovery for over 8 mm-hmm. For addiction. What I wanted to say is that a community, from every researcher I've talked to and every recovering person I've interviewed, and I've interviewed hundreds, community is really one of the most helpful forms of recovery. So rehab doesn't just take you out of your environment, away from the unhealthy community, and put you into a place where you can't use. It puts you into a community that's helpful, that supports you. And the same thing happens with recovery systems. It's not just the 12 steps, it's Life Ring, it's Smart Recovery, it's all the other communities that are built around supporting the person from doing the damaging behaviors that they've convinced themselves are not really damaging, because addiction is the one disease that tells us that we don't really have a disease. Okay, so community is super helpful. And so it's not helpful. One reason why 28-day rehabs don't succeed by and large is that they detox people and then they let them loose back into their old lives. Like you said, the best kinds of treatment, if you're going to choose treatment, is treatment that lasts at least 60 to 90 days and perhaps even longer. That will bond you into a community that is supportive and that sends you back into your life and helps you look for a community that's like that.
So what did you learn from your addiction?
What did I learn personally? Oh, I learned so much. I learned that, I really thought I was a lot more powerful than I am. I did not realize that there was this thing, called addiction, that I was powerless over in one way. It just turned me upside down, shook me all around, destroyed my life, took everything from me almost. And I remember at one point thinking, oh my God, I'm addicted. I can't stop this. And it took me about 9 months after that point to actually stop it, or to get to a point to where I asked for help. And that's when I went to Crystal Meth Anonymous, and I turned to friends and said, I need help.
In your opinion, what are some common financial mistakes that you've seen people make when they attend college or while they're attending college?
Well, I think nowadays it's, one big mistake is people don't necessarily consider the return on investment, because they didn't have to do that in the past. Like when I was going to school, which was, 10 years or so ago, you didn't really consider the return you might get on your degree, because you just figured, back in the day, it was like, if you get a degree, that's good enough, and that's gonna, that's gonna get you somewhere. But nowadays, like, job placement rates just aren't what they used to be. The job market is changing. And so I think, we kind of have to shift the way we think about a degree and think about the numbers involved. Like, what does it cost for that degree, and how much you're gonna get back? How soon are you gonna be able to pay back your student loan if you take one out?
In your particular case, you had $81,000 in student debt. Can you tell me how you ended up in that position? That's a lot of money.
Yes, that is a ton of money. And $81,000 in student loans came from, $23,000 of that came from my undergrad, which is from California State University, Long Beach. And so I took sort of an average amount for undergrad. But then later on, a few years later, I decided to go to graduate school. And I went to New York University, which is a private college, and private school tuition is extremely expensive. And so I took on an additional $58,000 in student loans to go to NYU. So that totaled $81,000, and that's not even including interest. So I'm sure it was closer to $90,000 to $100,000 with interest, everything said and done. So quite a lot of money I paid back.
In the 1980s, there was something called the Pace Amendment. And the Pace Amendment, well, you'll get the idea when I read the quote. No person shall be a citizen of the United States unless a non-Hispanic white of the European race, in whom there is no ascertainable trace of Negro blood, nor more than 1/8 Mongolian, Asian, Asia Minor, Middle Eastern, Semitic, Near Eastern, American Indian, Malay, or other non-European or non-white blood, provided that Hispanic whites, defined as anyone with an Hispanic ancestor, may be citizens if, in addition to the meeting the aforesaid ascertainable trace and percentage tests, they are in appearance indistinguishable from Americans whose ancestral home is in the British Isles or Northwestern Europe, only citizens shall have the right and privilege to reside permanently in the United States. This was an amendment that was supposed to be, it was pushed as something that should be an amendment to the Constitution. I think the 13th and 14th, if I'm not mistaken. And apparently that quote is associated with you. One, I wanted to find out if that's true, and if yes or no, how should somebody like me interpret that quote?
Yes, I wrote that when I was in my 20s, in the early 80s. At that time, I could see that America the founding stock was going to be displaced, and I wanted to create a separate white ethno-state. And at that time, I thought the way to do it was to repatriate all of the non-whites. The blacks go back to Africa, and the Hispanics go back to Latin America, and so forth. I think now that 30-some years have passed, it's no longer practical. But the concept of that there should be a separate white ethno-state is, I think, a good one and a valid one, and that's something that I still support. I mean, if I were to go to China, it's made up of Chinese. If I were to go to Japan, it's made up of Japanese. But in the white countries, we have been pushing, and that's primarily the globalists, have been pushing diversity and multiculturalism so much that the white people are just pushed out, and they have no country anymore. So I think that the concept of a white ethno-state is a valid one. I think that maybe the Pace Amendment that you just quoted is no longer practical.
I actually had an argument about this a couple of weeks ago with a religious person, and we were talking about Adam and Eve, and I told him that story was nonsense to me. Speaking of which, some of the stories in the Bible which I read, Adam and Eve, the rib, what? Noah's Ark, what? That literally doesn't make any sense at all, given what we know. And I had explained to this person that, these stories didn't make sense to me, and, these stories supposedly happened a couple thousand years ago compared to dinosaurs, which we know existed millions of years ago. And on top of denying the existence of dinosaurs, he went on to talk about the Big Bang Theory and say that, hey, you atheists believe in the Big Bang Theory, so, who do you think created that? God. Okay, then why isn't the concept of the Big Bang Theory in your Bible? Because God would know that. God would know that he created the Big Bang, and he would have written that and told us that that's what happened. But no, in your religion, it's that he created the world in 6 days, and there's a snake, and there's Adam and Eve, and Adam or Eve, whatever, ate an apple, and that's how evil was created. Good job. Season 6. A lot has happened behind the scenes during Season 6. I can tell you firsthand that I didn't give a shit about the backlash that I would receive anymore for calling Asian women out. And my blog reflects that, obviously. I can tell you that having Harvard attached to my name has made it easier to call Asian women out to their face. But a lot of people didn't like it. Some of it justified, I guess. But again, when you had to deal for what I had to deal with, that doesn't really matter. Not to play a pity party, it's just I don't care. I try to get my message across on different platforms like Nextshark. And we had a decent relationship until the love life of an Asian guy decided that he wanted to smear me when he didn't like what I had to say about Asian women and white worship, even though he had agreed with it on his own page in 2017. If he wants to flip like a pancake, that's his problem, but I don't appreciate getting smeared when literally the only reason why you don't like me saying what I have to say about Asian women is not because what I have to say is right, it's because you just don't like a non-Asian calling Asian women out. I would at least like you to admit that instead of being a fake piece of shit. But whatever. Outside of that nonsense, though, when it comes to my blog, I've gotten a lot of attention. I've gotten comments on pretty much every video that I've done regarding racist Asians and racist Asian women, something that I'm not really used to. I'm not really used to getting comments on any of my videos. But the first couple of episodes, I obviously didn't cover this issue. I covered feminism, white supremacy, and I did an episode on euthanizing disabled people because I didn't really know how I was going to tackle this. But by episode 79, I knew where I was going with it, and I knew that I was going to find what I wanted to find eventually. So, episode 83, that got some attention, turned some heads. And episode 91, wow, that was put on Reddit by a lot of people. And it got the love life of an Asian guy's attention. Of course, he knows that I interviewed Michelle Worth, and he decides to say that it's not worth, we shouldn't be calling out Asian women for who they date. Again, because he's petty and he wants to try and smear people that he doesn't like anymore, he decides to go against his own principled arguments or his own beliefs to get back at somebody who rubbed him the wrong way. Anyways, this season got so much attention that I decided to extend it from the normal 15 seasons, and I decided to go to 25, this being the 25th episode. And it's been a hell of a ride. I know that towards the end, people were starting to recognize what I was doing, and it was harder to get people to come on to do this and to do these interviews, because I had to send a lot of emails at a certain point, and they weren't getting answered. I think it's because people know that I'm right, but they don't want me to have the spotlight that comes with calling other people out, so they just ignore me. That's their choice, but I got the 25 anyways. But here it is. It's a long clip show here. It's like an hour. But season 6 in all of its glory.
Granddad never mentioned that there were men as dark as this. Wow, look at that nose. He's just like a pig. He's a monster! Hi.
What are your issues, if any, with modern day feminist men and women?
I really have a problem with the individual feminist man or woman. I don't have a problem with the individual feminist person. I think that they are very nice people, and I think that they are mostly just trying to do good, and that's admirable, and that's a good thing. However, I do not believe in the foundation of feminism. I do not believe in the foundation of patriarchy theory. I do not believe in the foundation that women are oppressed relative to men, or that women have been oppressed historically relative to men. I know that will send a lot of alarm bells, because most people tend to believe that women have been oppressed relative to men historically. Now, I do think that women had a very hard role historically, but I do not believe that oppression came anywhere from men. I think that mostly it came, if we have experienced oppression as women, it came from nature. Our role as women in nature was one where we would get pregnant and have children, and until we had safe, reliable forms of contraceptives, basically I think it's actually very complex. This is probably too complex to talk about right now, but I don't see that men as a whole have oppressed women as a whole, and feminist theory is basically laid on that foundation. If you look up the definition of feminism, it is fighting for the rights of women relative to men. And when you ask the question further, why would you decide to only fight for women and not fight for both women and men? Why wouldn't you be an egalitarian and fight for wherever you see there's injustice? The answer is always because women have been oppressed relative to men, and I don't believe that to be true. So basically my issue is not with feminist men or women. My issue is with the theory surrounding feminism as a whole.
Because whatever. It's about slavery, and you saying it's equivalent to winning the lottery. So I did some research, and this is from the Gilder Lehrman LEHRMAN, Institute of American History, so it's a credible institution. And they have an article that was published in 1805 called Injured Humanity, which looked at slavery at the time period. And there are some pictures which, when you see the final video, you'll see them being posted. So right now you can't see them. I'll give you a description with the caption. The first picture is of a white slave owner basically separating two black people. And the caption says, the husband and wife, after being sold to different purchasers, violently separated, probably never to see each other more. Another caption shows a white slave owner standing next to black people who are definitely slaves, one of them naked, and the caption says, when slaves are purchased by planters, they are generally marked on the breasts with a red-hot iron. And the final picture that I'll cover is a white slave owner basically telling a black slave owner to whip a naked black slave owner. A white slave owner telling a black slave to whip another black slave that is naked. The caption says, the manner of fixing the slaves on a ladder to be flogged, which is also occasionally laid flat in the ground for severe punishment. My question to you, Ken, God help me, how the fuck is that like winning the lottery?
Okay, first of all, you have to put that in context. Did atrocities occur, yes or no? Yes, they did. Nobody's denying that. Did atrocities occur in Africa when these same people or their ancestors were slaves owned by black people? What atrocities occurred in Africa? So you take a compilation of the atrocities and the extensiveness of the atrocities in Africa and compare those overall to those in North America, and you say the difference is astonishing. Now, we're not saying that when people adopt children that those children are never abused. Some of them are, and it's horrific. We send children to school, and frequently, they're abused by their teachers. In fact, if you Google teachers arrested, you'll be dumbfounded of what's happening to our kids when we send them to school. But what you're doing is you're taking a few isolated incidences and you're extrapolating it across all of slavery as if that was the norm, and that's simply dishonest. That was not the norm. In fact, we know that in Louisiana, there was a riot when they found out that a white slave owner was abusing her slaves.
That was a report that I showed you from 1805, which took different accounts, multiple accounts of slavery at the time period. And I don't understand, let me finish, and I don't understand how those experiences, which are basically a picture of what it was like to be in slavery, how that could be any worse to what was going on in Africa to the point that you could say that living in those conditions was like winning the lottery for them. Like, where do you get that evidence?
Okay, I want to interject here. See, the thing that you read from, Raphael, was scholarship that was written in the 1800s, where scholarship today is much more advanced. And so we need to look at those great anthropologists of today who've studied this issue, Key and Peele. And they put forth a video on slavery that I think is more characterizes what slavery was actually like. Okay, well, being serious here, going back to Ken, because I don't find this remotely funny. The problem isn't so much for your organization as it is suicide choices for people with disabilities. It's the idea that the decision being made is based off of an inadequate amount of care for somebody who has disabilities relative to somebody who is virtually, I guess, healthy. And they're making a decision based off of not only the condition, but the idea that they aren't getting proper treatment for their condition. And the issue is to let them make a decision based off of whether or not, if they were getting the condition treated properly, if they still wanted to continue to live in society. Was that what I'm getting?
That's part of it, yeah. Okay. That's in terms of palliative care. But the other thing is in both Canadian and American society, most people with disabilities who need personal assistance in daily tasks are institutionalized, whereas in fact, home care, which is less expensive, is more dignified for the individual because the individual doesn't have to live according to the schedule of the nursing home where they're placed. If I need, 4 or 5 hours of personal care a day, that's hypothetical. Mm-hmm. If I live in an institution, I'm going to have to get up and eat and use the bathroom when it's convenient for the institution. But if I have a home care person that I employ to come in and do those things for me, I can decide when I'm going to get up in the morning, when I'm going to eat, what I'm going to eat, and those little those parts of my life are going to be under my control. And if you look at the statistics in Oregon, the reasons people give for wanting assisted suicide and in that state have more to do with loss of autonomy, loss of control in their lives than it does with pain. In fact, pain is one of the lowest, the smallest percentage of reasons that people give. It's only about 25 to 30% of people cite pain as one of the reasons that they want assisted suicide.
What would you say to Asian women about black men as a whole who may not have seen black men or don't necessarily haven't experienced any of this? What do you have to say to them and the Asian community about black men?
That's actually, to me, that's a very, very, it's a complex question. Because I say it's a complex question because I think, I think black men, pound for pound, are some of the most traumatized folks in the world. I do. In this country, we have a hell of a target on us. Everything from, I think if you put a black little boy versus a white boy, or even a black little boy versus a black little girl, the target is on us to kind of keep us down in many ways, from receiving a decent education, getting a lot of shots, legitimate shots at life. I say all that to say, and again, I'm just trying to simplify this as best I can, but I think a lot of us black men are, collectively and individually traumatized, and many of us have not addressed that trauma. Now, with that statement, how does that relate to, what would you say to an Asian woman who's interested, I think pound for pound, many of us black men, we got a lot of shit to us. We have a lot of shit to, and I think there's a lot of healing we need to do. And because of the fact that a lot of us haven't kind of done, kind of gone through this healing process, I think many of us are damaging, other people. And one of the things that I'm particularly kind of, I think keenly aware of, I think many of us are unfortunately damaging our sisters. I think there are a lot of folks out there. There's a stereotype that black women are angry, black women are crazy. I think to a large extent, a lot of them are. And I think a lot of them are because we done made them that way. Like, I honestly believe that. I think we done made them. We done made a lot of black women crazy. We done made a lot of black women angry because I personally think that a lot of black women, like, they just want to be with us. They don't really want to be with anybody else. But, a lot of us, we don't give a damn. A lot of black men, we don't, whoever holler at us, we're gonna holler at, and then, so we're out kind of wandering with any and anybody. And a lot of the, I think a lot of women of color, black women, they go out and they, test their loves, test the waters out there, and only to kind of return because they want and need us. And we're not there for them. And when we are there for them, I think many of us are playing too many games. And this doesn't mean that all of us, because I know, what's he talking about? I know my friend, she married for 20 years. No, this ain't all of us. But I'm saying, generally speaking, and it's hard to have these kind of conversations using that term, generally speaking. But I'll say all day long, I think us black men when it comes to being with our black women, we need to step the fuck up. I'm sorry. I just think we do. And, so going back to your question, what does an Asian woman need to think about us, us black men? I almost don't care, because I care about black men and black women first and foremost. But, if you're an Asian woman, you're into black men, I think you just need to know that, black men kind of go through some unique experiences which put a lot of pressure on us, and I think, you need to know that you need to know what you're getting into.
I never really thought about dating Asian women in the U.S. because I knew that they were basically kind of bananas. You can tell when I went to university, they wasn't really trying to see like dating. I'm talking about Japanese, Chinese, Koreans. Rarely would they be dating a black guy. It would be mostly like basically white dudes. I remember I was in SUNY Purchase. This is kind of like a X-rated story where I was chilling with this dude, and he was a white dude. He was telling me, "Yo, I just ran a train on this Asian woman from Taiwan, on this Taiwanese girl, and like me and four of my boys ran a train on her." And I was like, "Damn," and I knew the girl. And she was just basically like white worship. She was like white worshiping, a white worship kind of girl. She didn't care about the reputation that she had or the reputation that was floating around about her. She just thought that white was right. So, I didn't feel anything of it because I was like, that's just the way it is in America. Asian women are kind of like bananas. White on the inside, yellow on the outside. And I was never really that attracted to them. I was just like, an Asian girl's an Asian girl. Some of them are pretty. That's it. It was not something that I really thought about. In China, when I got here, I still wasn't really that interested in Asian women. I was just interested in the culture. I guess it was just like an added bonus that, yeah, they have women here or whatever. And then as you stay longer, you kind of, because there are only Asian girls here, you're like, okay, I think Asian women are attractive, because I used to think the big booty black girls were attractive, big booty white girls. And after that, after I got here, it slowly changed to like, oh yeah, I like Asian girls too. And I guess when I would try to get a date, there would be problems, like, like, oh, I used to use these data apps, and they would put a post, yeah, I want this type of dude, and I would answer, and the first question was like, are you white? And then when I didn't say, if I said no, I'm not white, then they wouldn't answer me.
Do you feel like you mentioned that it's negative somewhat. Do you feel like there is a negative perception overall from the Asian American community about Mexican Americans? And if so, why is that the case?
Absolutely. Personally, yes, I do. It's always been that way. Basically, where we live, okay, a lot of the neighborhoods that we live. I lived in Inglewood, which is predominantly Mexican and black. Mm-hmm. Okay, there are a lot of gangs there, a lot of gang activities and whatnot. But I mean, not everybody's a gangster who lives there, mm-hmm. But it's like we have this image, and well, people would openly say, well, why don't you try to break the image? Why would I want to try to break the image? Who put this image on us? Who am I to break an image I have nothing to do with? Mm-hmm. I'm trying to change your perspective of me as a person. I can't change, something that you're gonna put on everybody here. That's your ignorance, not mine. Mm-hmm. I want to change your mind about who I am and what kind of person I am. That's the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get to know me and you say, oh, he's a stand-up guy. He's not the type of guy that I thought everybody was. I thought everybody was like that, but no, it's not like that. But see, I'm old, dude. I'm old. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and that was civil rights movement started back in those days. So I've had my share. I ask my children all the time. I especially my daughter. Have you ever had a situation where you had to scream racism? In LA, no, not really. And I thank God for that. We have stereotypes. A lot of people, they view us as this and that, but it's like, it's just ignorance. People just don't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
But once you start having conversations with somebody, and you start to change their perspective of you, it'll start changing the perspective of everybody in the community.
Mm-hmm. So many people believe that Asian women only go after Asian or white guys with money. Do you believe that this is the case? More importantly, do you think that you'd be as successful as you are if you were going around doing this as a black or Hispanic man?
Okay, so again, I'll answer this question, but again, Asian women is a big category, mm-hmm. so it's kind of
East Asian then.
Whatever. Even again, that's still a lot of places, but I can answer your question nonetheless. Okay, so this is what I would say. There are some places that all see, I can answer this question, but I feel like for me to answer it accurately, I'm going to have to say a lot. I don't know if that's okay or not.
That's fine.
But the short answer is the money thing is a lot less relevant. Like, I would probably say it's about maybe 70% less relevant than people think. Okay? Now, my evidence for that is I don't have a lot of money. I don't really have any signs of money. I don't wear nice clothes or anything like that. Maybe like 1 in 20 girls will even ask me questions about money stuff. I don't know. To me, it's such a weird question. Like, it's hard for me to answer it because it's so outside of my belief system that it's like I have to think about how to answer it. It's like saying, like, is water wet? It's like, okay, it is. Like, let me try to prove how it wet. Look, the money thing is the money thing is just not a thing. Okay? I have a lot of friends who are broke as shit, and they do just fine. Girls respond more to behavior and to humor and to certain things about you. They respond to that over money stuff. Okay? And I mean, look, I know this because I don't have a lot of money, and I have a lot of girlfriends. I have a lot of girls, and they are, I have girlfriends that they tell me about their ex and how their ex would buy all this stuff. Like this girl Nikki, who I'm seeing right now, her ex-boyfriend paid her rent, and okay, all right, man. Sorry, my roommate messaged me.
It's fine.
Her ex-boyfriend, paid her rent and would buy her gifts and stuff like that, and I don't do that at all, right? And her ex-boyfriend wants her back, and she shows me the texts of him saying like, "Oh, I miss you," and all this stuff, and it's like, well, why would she pick him? Why would she pick me over him if like money was a big deal, right? The white and Asian thing. So I can't really speak too heavily on the black guy thing because I haven't traveled too much with black guys. But this is when people ask me questions like this is what I like to say. First of all, I can't really speak on behalf of how girls respond to other races, right? So like, I can't talk about what it's like to be a black guy. I can't because I'm not a black guy. But if I'm friends with black guys who I've traveled with, and the thing is, when you travel with a group, it's like a scientific experiment because like you get to see your results compared to your buddies, right? So, for example, like there was recently, like last year, I had my friend Chris, who's Chinese. He's a slightly dark Chinese guy. He's shorter than me. And I had Shivank, who is a very tall, who has a dad bod, but he's tall, and he has a really good-looking face. All right, man, see you soon. And he's Indian, okay? So we got tall Indian man, not short, just like a little bit shorter than me, Asian man, and then me. All of us are going on Tinder. All of us are in Bangkok. right? So we can see each other's results on Tinder, and it's like a scientific experiment because we're all living in the same place, right? And so, or also I have a friend named Loy, and Loy kills it. Loy usually gets prettier girls than all of us. He's thin, shorter than us, and he's Asian. He's I don't know what he is. I think he's Korean or something. But he would get hotter girls than all of us. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And he isn't rich or anything like that. All of us are not rich. We just had small condos and all that. So it's like, you know, I can talk about what other races, like what they're capable of achieving because I was next to them. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I haven't really hung out with too many black guys like long enough to really know.
Another aspect of your article that was interesting to me was when you said that Asian men think that they need money to impress Asian women, and you kind of criticize them for that, but then you say that for Asian women, dating white men means that they can get to go to sports events and concerts, exotic trips, which all cost money. So is it not somewhat contradictory to criticize Asian men for seeking wealth when one of the reasons you say that white men are better is because they can take Asian women to places that cost money?
Okay, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
If you are an Asian man and you have money, you don't really do these kind of things, okay? Because most Asian men are not that interested in concerts, sports events, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them do not live a very interesting lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
whereas white men live a more exciting lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned master race. Now, I looked at your website, and it says, if I'm not mistaken, something about a master race of Eurasians. So you say that it's not about creating a master race, but the website says sort of that, does it not?
I do believe on the About page, which I wrote, it talks about, well, when people hear the word Aryanism, they assume it's a master race. But again, I use the term facetiously to talk about, well, if we are talking about groups, then we're going to talk about race. And assumingly, it's often a plan in the alt-right to create a quote-unquote white ethno-state. Just recently, Richard Spencer has announced Operation Homeland, which basically, you know, with the word operation, it sounds like some terrorist organization about to create some white man Zionism or something. And people are really investing time into this ideal of alt-right ideologies that will be post-multicultural and diverse. And when we're talking about master race, it's, again, this ideal that brings up supremacy. And I am not a supremacist. I think, but I do believe there are, ruling people that want to be with people like themselves. And I understand that there is definitely a standard in America that I would agree that the thing I point out is the biggest hypocrisy you can see today is that when white liberals talk about multiculturalism and diversity, it really just means, well, what's in it for us white liberals and how can we consume other non-whites' material goods? And when I say, if I ever do say a Eurasian master race, I'm referring to a group of bourgeois white mice people and their Asian wives or Asian men with white wives who are basically in this urban metrosexual niche that pretends that there's no such thing as race, yet it's clearly evident there is this weird Eurasian side of things, right? You can't be fully white because then you'll be cisgendered and you'll be patriarchal. But if you are Asian or something like that, well, you can pass as that. And just from my own observations, I've seen that this is like the ideal that mulatto futurism isn't happening. There's a website, therightstuff.biz. There's a blog piece. I always cannot remember the guy who wrote the blog, but he wrote something about mulatto futurism, saying that our multicultural and diverse society loves to engineer mulatto futurism. This is the ideal that whites and blacks are going to, create mulatto people, and there's going to be this bicultural union. And you see that everywhere in the, media and toys and stuff like that. We see it in Star Wars and Disney's A Wrinkle in Time, and it's just force on that. Yet it doesn't really happen that so much in numbers. And according to Pew Research Center in a 2015 interracial relationships, Hispanic is the highest, followed by white and Asian relationships. So there's something weird that mulatto futurism isn't adding up, and rather there is this Eurasian thing going on. And this is where I'm trying to poke at for most of the time. So for the whole master race thing, again, I use it jokingly to for these people, because it's ironic that these people are against such forms of supremacy when in fact they are the ones showing that they want to be preferred with people like themselves. So if that could clear up anything. So
I don't know. I get that. It's just, coming back to your article, I never saw an article until I guess Eliza Romero said something about Asian women actually just sticking to white men, but I never saw an article talking about how Asian women should stop bashing people who like Asian men. Who like Asian women, and just say, give them a chance. Never that. It was always, hey, you got to be careful, you got to watch out, stuff like that. And, it bothers me that I see Asian women being defended when non-Asian men weren't defended. I don't know if you saw Natalie Trent's documentary, but
I didn't.
You did? Okay. Well, she did.
Did not.
Okay. Well, I'll just say that when I saw it, it came off as somebody that felt like she didn't know where it was coming from. This whole hatred for people who date white men who are Asian women because she's married to a white man. This idea that we should have a healthy dialogue and a healthy conversation. Where was my healthy conversation? Where was my healthy dialogue? I never got that. But now all of a sudden, because you're getting called names, you're getting, the saltiness from non-Asian men who you might have neglected in the dating process. Now you want to have a conversation? Like, no. From my perspective, I can't speak for Asian men, but from my perspective, I don't want to have a conversation with Asian women because I've had enough of their lies. I've had enough of their, of them twisting things to make it seem like they're the victim. You're part of this problem. Not individually, but collectively, because it's always the Asian women that are talking about Asian American issues that just so happen to be dating white men, and are talking about, creepy white guys, but happen to be dating white men. It's always that. Like, enough of the conversation about, particularly because you never gave me the chance, going back to like Christiana Trong, to like Asian women without being considered to be a racist or, some kind of fetishizer or whatever. When I've tried to bust my ass, like, no, I want to make you feel just as uncomfortable as you've made me feel. I want to humiliate you just as like you humiliated me. I want to make you feel just as awkward about your dating preferences as you've made me, without giving you any consideration for your situation. This isn't the time, from my perspective, to look at it as, oh, well, maybe they were just in love. No, screw that. No, you're a white worshiper. You're all white worshipers. Because to you, not you, but Asian women 5 years ago, I was just chasing Asian women because I wanted a tight little submissive Asian girl. That's it. So you know what? You're a white worshiper no matter what. How does it feel? That's how I feel about it. I don't want to have a conversation with Asian women about it. I don't. And that's how angry I am about it. And I bet you, particularly within the Hobbit community on Reddit, but Asian men in general, that's exactly how they feel when it comes to Asian women, because they're tired of their lies and their games.
Yeah, you know what? It's so sad, and I feel empathetic and I feel sad for the Asian women that have to put down men of their own race. Mm-hmm. I feel so bad for them that they have to do that, because you don't have to. You don't have to put Asian men down and people of your own. You know what? That's just another example of, they've fallen so far from the tree, and they've forgotten where they've come from, and they've forgotten about history, and they've forgotten about who they are. And that's sad. I'm only empathetic to that. I don't hate them. I just feel sorry for them. And I feel like they're a minority. I don't feel like they're allowed to speak for all Asian women, because the Asian women, who are in my household, who I know, are very pro-Asian.
Whether it be in America or your experiences in East Asia, do you feel as though Asian women discriminate towards Black and Hispanic men?
discriminate.
Or against, I should say.
Yeah. I'd say to a certain extent they do. In the Philippines, like I said, black men usually have it pretty easy as well. Not to the degree that white men do, but pretty easy. The analogy I made is that, like, the different experiences that white men will have in the Philippines versus black men, like comparing a man who has $20 billion versus someone who has $15 billion. Yeah, the guy who has $20 billion has more money than you, but you both have more money than you're ever going to be able to spend. You know, one of my best friends is black, and he served several tours in the Philippines as part of his service in the army, and he absolutely loves the women over there. You get more discrimination in countries like Korea and China, I would imagine. I don't know so much about Japan. There's actually a good book on Japanese culture I recommend called Black Passenger Yellow Cabs by Stefan Bryan. He's a Jamaican English teacher who lived in Japan for 10 years, and the book is mainly about his dealings with Japanese women and his experiences as an English teacher. And he had a pretty easy time over there. According to his estimation, Japanese girls absolutely love Black American culture and hip hop and stuff like that. I haven't had enough time in Japan to really confirm whether that's true or not, but it's worth considering.
From the perspective, I guess, from the black community, I've talked to some black people, it may feel as though we're held to it, and Hispanics too, are held to a different standard when it comes to interacting with or dating people within the Asian community. And part of that you could say is because we're always portrayed as people who are criminals and uneducated. But sometimes it feels as though we need to get like a college degree or have our lives together if we're black and Hispanic, and we need to associate with other Asian people or date them. Whereas a white person or an Asian person, or a white person more likely, would not necessarily have to have those qualities. So while it may seem as though, like, all right, we're making judgments based off of what we see in the media, it seems that even the people who aren't doing those things, if they're simply black or Hispanic, aren't necessarily welcome in the Asian community, especially if you're black. And that's why I asked.
I disagree, because if I see, an Asian guy or a white guy sagging their pants, I wouldn't find them attractive either. You know what I mean? It's like, it's on what you see in communities. And you see mostly, blacks or Hispanics sagging their pants more than white people or Asians. Mm-hmm. So it's like that. And I feel like I don't think it's racism. I think it's more of preference. People have preferences. I think culture-wise, too. White culture is very similar to Asian culture, and Hispanic culture too. Hispanics and Asians have like very similar culture, I believe, like family values and like a lot of things tied together. And that's what is deemed attractive when you find someone you want to marry, someone that has the same culture, someone that has the same values as you. And we have two different clashing cultures. It doesn't work out, and that's why people, for me, I guess, or like Asians, that's why people, date people that have similar cultures, similar mindsets.
So I did read an article on WNYC that was published a while back that said that an Indian man felt like he was struggling with Asian women because
sorry, can you say that again?
An Indian man who was struggling with Asian women, and he said that he had been rejected by women because they said that they wouldn't date him or they wanted white men for status. Now my point is that looking from somewhat the Indian and even the black and Hispanic man perspective, we're not even mentioning this conversation of Asian women and who they date because, in my opinion, Asian women have racialized success. So like we're on the bottom as black and Hispanic men, or sometimes Indian, more on the bottom of the racial hierarchy. So we aren't even considered to be relevant unless we have an absurd amount of education or an absurd amount of money that would equate to a white man, an average white man, or sometimes an Asian man. So we're talking about before, whether or not Asian gravitate to white men for status. Do you see Asian women gravitating towards black and Hispanic men? Why or why not? And do you agree with my conclusion about, racializing success?
If we just want to look at the stats, I would say no. That if you want to look at the incidence of, I use the term outmarry. It seems like a very clinical term, but that is the actual term that these studies use. So I'll use outmarry. If you look at the incidences of outmarrying amongst Asian women, white men is by far the largest demographic. So so if you take Asian women and you look at whom when they outmarry, whom they outmarry, it is by far white men. Okay, so that statistic is there. And again, but the hard part is getting at the reasoning behind it, because I think it is a multitude of factors. I think it is, some of it might be status, but then if it is status, that status could be tied to the fact that white men tend to have more status in American society than other ethnicities. So, it's complicated, right? I agree that Asian men, Latino men, and I like not just Eastern Asian men, but all Asian men, so including Indians, that as far as the sexy stereotype that's prevalent in Western culture, that we're definitely on the bottom of the totem pole, that we're not seen as sexy, and we're not seen as sexually attractive. So I think that plays into it as well, and I think that's something that we should talk about. I think it's getting better now. We are seeing more and more Asian men in Hollywood who are seen as sex symbols. Like John Cho is one of them, and I think that's cool. I think that's a great way to start. Right? Is if the media portrays men of color in a sexy manner, in a manner where they're seen as sex symbols and seen as quote unquote manly, then that bodes well for everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm breaking the stereotype. I'm not a thug. I'm not a drug dealer. But do I really need Harvard to make Asian women realize that I'm worth something? Like, that's really extreme.
It's not like worth something, but again, if you grow up where you're told Hispanics is associated with a certain stereotype. Like, give me a stereotype. Like, Hispanics is associated with being what?
Illegal immigrants.
Okay, illegal immigrant, right? Black is associated with being what?
Crime.
What?
Crime.
With having crime. So if you meet somebody of those race that you recognize as those race, you're gonna be thinking of these stereotypes in your head, right? But then if you add an element of so those are very undesirable traits, right? It's also like scary. Would you want to date someone who's known for crime?
Why would you assume that just because a race is associated with a crime, whatever, that particular person is also prone to crime? I mean, there are many stigmas associated with white men as considered to be fetishizing Asian women. White men have known to colonize. White men have known to oppress. Why isn't there a stereotype associated with that? And why aren't Asian women careful around white men because of those stereotypes? So, that whole idea of why would I want to associate with somebody who's part of a negative stereotype, if you're educated to know that that's part of like white people trying to make themselves look good, and that white people have put these stereotypes on Black and Hispanic men, is it not on Asian women to realize that that's kind of horrible to look at Black and Hispanic men that way? And at this point, do you think that because we see a lot of white male Asian female couples, that the parents are influencing heavily like who Asian women date, or do you think that Asian women are like gravitating themselves towards white and Asian and not Black?
Oh, you think like not because of their parents, right? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Do you think it's like mostly the parents at this point, or do you think it like the women are also choosing themselves?
I think definitely still choosing, because I think that Asian girls, like, stereotypically, like, not to judge, but I think they just prefer white males. Like, even these days, I don't see too many Asian girls and Asian men together. It's usually an Asian female with, like, either a white or a Spanish or maybe even someone dark skin, because it is out there, but it's just it's not common. Not as common as an Asian and a white guy, but I still feel like there's that attraction. Like, I feel like Asian and whites are kind of on the same class level. Like they're both able to make more money, and I feel like Spanish and Black people are kind of like on the lower end. You know what I mean? Just stereotypically, not like statistics, but I'm saying like just judging by looking at. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll ask what may seem to be a crazy question, but I'll just bring it out there because it was kind of in the post. Do you want a white baby?
No, not really. I mean, okay, I do find white people beautiful. I find Indian people beautiful. I actually think black babies are really cute, but I would never be able to have a black baby. So I don't know. When I was a kid, I thought, oh, I want to have a white, blonde, blue-eyed baby. But you know, it was just a sort of like shooting at the stars. Like it was never going to happen. I mean, I am Asian. If I were to have, I would definitely be half Asian. But then if you look at my baby, and I'll bring her out later after she's had her breakfast. She is very pale in complexion compared to me. I'm quite tanned. I'm not. I don't know if you can really see the video quality, but I'm quite tan. My husband's quite tanned as well for a Caucasian guy, and she's just really pale. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is like so weird.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I do, like I said before, I do find mixed babies really beautiful. But it doesn't mean that I was actively seeking out a Caucasian partner to have babies with. Like I didn't really make it my life goal. Like my life goal is centered around my career and my family. So I was accused of that as well. Like, oh my goodness, this woman like really spent all her life just to post this photo. It's a bit.
Like I asked for the men, I'll ask for the women. Is there a particular demographic group in terms of age, income, or race that Asian women are more inclined to say that they want compared to others?
Well, it's probably not gonna, blow the roof off of anyone's house if they hear it's kind of what Hollywood portrays. Not to say that only in LA do people see it that way, but I think the guys who come to me, if they're Asian or if they're white, that's going to be more of the demographic that a lot of Asian women tend to naturally not have to do a double take. Okay, you sent me this profile, great. And if a guy's within probably 5 to 10 years of her senior, in terms of age, she probably doesn't need to do a double take, but matchmaking is all about double takes. Because it is boring when it is just so simple. We've been doing this for 10 years. So for us, our approach is we want to unpack what is going on in someone's head, their belief systems. Is it holding them back from happiness in general? Because that's really why they're coming to me. They could say all these things like, I want this height, this income, this, that, and like, oh, hopefully, we'll do all these exciting trips together. But what they're really saying is, I want to be happy. And for us, we need to either say, okay, that's kind of realistic, or, is that really going to make you happy? Because the other party is not showing up. They're not saying the same things and preferring you. So what should we do?
Yeah.
But back to kind of your question, like what ethnicities, is there income or race or age that women prefer? Asian women, I think in particular is your question. They're going to see what's going on TV, what their parents have told them, what their friends are saying. Even in 2018 right now, people are still very affected by their social, kind of what voices they hear in their social environment. So when we have a client, and we could break down even like, hey, how is white guy's experience different than an Asian guy? And there's still differences even in that, difference on what Asian women prefer. And then when we have Black guys, Latino guys, Middle Eastern guys come to us, we always talk about, okay, how is that going to affect your equation? What are your numbers? And how do we go about doing this? And which Asian women are looking for you? And does that sound good?
Yeah.
Before we work together,
Yeah.
The problem is that the rejection factor. And people are so concerned and worried about the rejection factor, it causes them to have amnesia of some sort, to watch this, to be in the Asian community and don't even say hello to a woman. I walked into an eyeglass place recently in Chinatown, and first thing when the girl looked up at me, and I'm 6'5", I'm a tall black man, but the first thing was, oh my gosh. And even the ones that didn't speak English, their mentality is not looking at my height to play ball. They're looking at my height on a sexual level, period. This and what it is that so many men don't even realize, especially men of color, that there's so much in demand that the Asians only could go for the European guys because the European guys are the ones approaching them. We are less likely to go to a Chinese restaurant and really try to have a date with the girl or the grocery store or anything that's happens to be in our urban neighborhoods to actually approach this girl to say one day she'll go on a date with me before she goes to her upstate home.
Here's a clip from the web series of Also Beautiful, which was produced by Debbie Lum, a woman who wanted to look into the issue of yellow fever with her documentary, Seeking Asian Female.
Like, my parents were never like, oh, don't date this, that, or the other, but they did say, think about your choices, and if you do marry someone who isn't white or isn't Asian, you may be, think about your children, that they will be part black, using the example of a black partner.
I'm attracted to Asian women, they're not attracted to me. The ads from Asian women online are almost all looking for white guys, even over Asian guys. Because, I see in their ads, white guy. Only. Whites only.
There is far more evidence to show that Asian women want white men than there is showing that Asian women want black men. Again, I don't understand how Nathaniel is reaching his conclusions about what the issue is and what can be done. Now he's saying that white men are more likely to approach Asian women than black men? How does he know this? How does he know that the reason why white men date Asian women is because white men approach Asian women more often than black men? How does he even know that approaching Asian women would work as a black man? Tyrell Shaw, a black man, tried to approach Asian women and he failed miserably. He wrongfully turned to violence and started assaulting Asian women because he was sick of seeing Asian women choose white guys over him, and he eventually killed himself in the summer of 2015. Did Asian women talk about how they wanted to be approached by black men then? No. They made it an issue of Shaw feeling entitled to Asian women, and they said that he was objectifying Asian women. Now, I'm not saying that assaulting anyone is okay, but if a black man takes his life because he can't get an Asian woman to talk to him, and Asian women aren't showing any signs that they want to date black men, why is it a black man's fault for thinking that Asian women don't want him? Going a little bit deeper into the dating part, if you do see black and Hispanic men in Asia, or just in general, how do you think that Asian women would view black and Hispanic men as romantic partners in Asia?
How do I think they get viewed? I don't know enough guys enough.
Andreas, he's Indian, right?
Okay, sure. Okay, so that's true.
Andreas crushes it.
Okay, so there's this one guy I know called Andreas, or Social Synapse, and he is I think his dad's from Bolivia, but he could pass for Indian, right? But he's American. He's from Oregon. His dad's from Bolivia. His mom's American, and he's a good-looking guy. That's one thing, but he absolutely kills it because he's got really good game, and he kills it in Japan. And Japan is quite a xenophobic, racist place, and he would always say to me, "Oh, it's easier because you're white." But to be honest, in Japan at least, he definitely has a million times better game with Japanese girls because they're quite unique set of skills needed to game those girls. But anyway, he just does so much better than most white guys, and yeah, he gets a lot, very consistently, and with really hot girls. And one thing he does say though is that with Tinder he finds it hard. So he finds he thinks it's his race or the color of his skin that makes it hard on Tinder, for example, in Asia. Mm-hmm. But he says the moment he can speak or open his mouth, that's how he'll win the girl over. Or in person, his charm can kind of come off better, and that way he can win them over. So I feel like maybe it's partly due to the race thing on Tinder, maybe, but when it comes to in person, that doesn't exist, at least for him. I think it's you got to have good game, whatever race you are. And then I know some guys that in Japan that do have a hard time, but I feel like that's their game. But then I know a couple of black guys as well that are get really hot girls in Japan for example. And one thing I noticed is in Japan, there's like a subset of girls that really like black guys, and they don't like white guys at all. And they have like Latino guys or black guys, but usually black guys. But the girls dress kind of like Nicki Minaj or a little bit Jennifer Lopez, like Latino style. They have like the big hooped earrings. They usually have good bodies for Japanese girls. They have better bodies than the average Japanese girl. They like work out. They got big asses. They dress like usually they like to go to hip hop clubs, so they dress like that. You know, like they might wear a hat or something. Have the big hoop earrings. But they're super hot. Like I think they're some of the hottest Japanese girls ever.
What would you suggest to the Asian community in terms of really trying to work on anti-blackness in their culture?
I would say just be willing to open up to people, even if they aren't from the same background as you. And I don't think that you have to have a common background in order to get along with each other or be friends with other people. And I think it's also interesting to learn about other people's cultures and where they come from. And basically, don't be so dismissive of other people and just be open to new people.
What do you have to say to Asian parents included, who have a negative view of Hispanics?
I would really want them to go out and actually talk to Hispanic people. I feel like that's the biggest problem is I see all these Korean women and they're just talking with other Korean women and they're gossiping about, the other people. Just go out and talk to a couple Hispanic people. You meet some bad people and you meet some good people. In the end, the society, I found that the culture of Hispanic people, especially when it comes to people from Honduras and El Salvador compared to people from Mexico, it's so much more nuanced than we're led to believe. I feel like as soon as people start talking to them and realizing that they're these people with personalities and not just a huge band of people who are trying to rob you, that all the stereotypes just kind of break down, I just want people, Asian people, to remain open-minded, not to be, freaked out. Just because people don't look like you doesn't mean that they're out to attack you. Just try to, be open-minded, keep your heart open, and try to, especially if you have a child who's trying to pursue a relationship, for the sake of your kid at least, to try to understand them a little bit before you make any judgments or come down on them too hard.
Going a little bit deeper, there's an article that I read on a blog called I'm Not the Nanny, where an Asian woman says that she had to hide the fact that she was dating a black man for 3 years from her parents, and when they found out, they temporarily disowned her. So my question is, do you think there's still a stigma associated with Asian women dating black men, either from the community itself or just for Asian women?
It's an interesting question, because I think at the end of the day, it really depends on where you grew up. I feel like if you grew up in Asia, it's totally different altogether. There are parents who are very, very conservative, who would obviously love that their daughter or their son would date, somebody else that's of the same race. That's only because of, how they were raised and what they're comfortable with. But I would say that parents or kids that grew up in America, it could be a totally different thing, whereby, it's just a little bit more open. I don't think it's so much of a stigma when it's more in America, but I think that me growing up in Malaysia, seeing how things are before, I would say that I could see that a little bit more.
Okay. So.
And also, I have I have an Indian girlfriend, and her parents have lived in the United States for a long time, and they don't want her dating anyone else outside her race. So.
So it depends, but you would say it's less of a stigma in the West or in America.
Yeah, I think so.
Going from on the other side, I read a question on Quora which asks if Asian women into Hispanic men, and a woman from California who's Asian said that pretty much, even though she was, most of them weren't. This question is for Lillian. Would you agree with that Asian women are open to dating Hispanic men from what you see, or not? Why or why not?
I think most Asian women are not really interested because they have so much pressure from their families to stay within the Chinese or within the Koreans or within the Asians. So most women don't really look for Hispanic men, most Asian women.
It's not about looking, but is it whether they're open to it?
If they're open to it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
I would say, if I were to answer, I think there's a stream of Asian Americans that are more Americanized than others. So there are some Chinese American families where the kids grow up very wedded to their Chinese heritage, and there are others who completely reject it and want to be completely thoroughly American. And so within that community of those who want to be completely and thoroughly American, there's total openness to.
Actually, my cousin's married to
a black guy, but not a Latino.
No, a Latino.
Who?
Pablo.
Pablo who? Oh, Argentinian.
He's
Yeah.
My cousin is
That's
married
right.
to an
That's right.
Argentinian.
Sorry,
Okay.
there is one more in the family actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So within her family, her cousins, not a single female cousin within her family has married a Chinese man. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, including you, 7.
Yeah. 7 cousins.
7 female cousins on her side of the family, and those cousins are purely Chinese, by the way. And so one has married a black, 2 have married whites, 2 have married Hispanics, and actually three whites. Now with the wedding that we went to.
Yeah.
So.
Asking a question about men of color now. There was a book that I read, part of it, called We Wear the Mask, where a Native American guy who's planning to go to Dartmouth, he's playing up his Native American heritage, but he's actually Mexican. And he's got a Chinese girlfriend. When his Chinese girlfriend finds out that he's Mexican, she breaks up with him temporarily, saying that Chinese people don't date Mexicans or blacks. My question is, do you think that Chinese people, that statement is true, that Chinese women generally don't date Mexicans or even Hispanics and blacks? Why or why not?
That's a good question. I'm going to be honest, unfortunate reality is Chinese people are racist. We are a racist group of people. I'm not saying that all of us are, and personally, I don't try to be like that. The current guy that I'm seeing, who's actually sitting right over there, is Indian, and we do have a problem with colorism like any other group of color. And a great statement that I would say that could really apply to East Asians, Chinese people, I guess, in this context, is the fact that we're the people who are, second in this society. We're almost white, but we're not white. We are close to getting to that, glass ceiling, but we're not actually there. And because of that, it's internalized the idea of the model minority. We find ourselves implementing and pushing this hate onto our fellow brothers, sisters, siblings of color, like black people, Latinos, and beyond. And it's wrong. It's 100% wrong. And another issue is part of the reason why I would say personally why I think there are Chinese women, Chinese men, blah blah blah, who don't go for darker skinned, fellow siblings of color, is because, as I said before, we mimic what we see. We're told that we can't be with people who are darker skinned. It's the colorism, fair skin is better, which is complete bullshit. Because it should be about what's on the inside. And the unfortunate reality is that racism, it does apply to dating life. And
I do agree. There is a lot of unfortunate occurrences of there being racist Chinese women and racist Chinese men, racist Chinese whatever.
Okay.
But that's not okay, and we do need to, emphasize solidarity.
I could say that I'm not going to do a 7th season, but that would be a lie because I said I was done after episode 30. What I can tell you is that one of the reasons why I get any attention now compared to the first couple of seasons is that I'm unapologetic in what I want to cover. There was a sense of authenticity, in my opinion, that comes with my most recent episodes that wasn't really in the first couple of seasons. The videos that I did were on other people's terms. I went to their neighborhoods. I went to their houses. I covered their issues. I was just there. I wanted them to prop me up. And I was also afraid about the backlash that I would receive from Asian women for calling them out. But at the same time, I don't care anymore because I don't think I should have to choose between my attraction to Asian women and demanding respect from Asian women. If they can't give me respect, I'm not going to give them respect. It's just that simple. And I think a lot of the people that are mad at what I have to say were people that I was never going to be able to get along with anyway. So, it's weeding them out without even having to talk to them. It's been an interesting ride. Again, I don't know what's in store for me in the future. I may be done with this blog, but I might show up somewhere else. I might be an investigative reporter. You'll see me there, or you might see me just doing a documentary somewhere. To say that I'm done isn't necessarily accurate, even if this channel doesn't continue, because I'm probably going to cover this issue in some form or another down the road. But I'm at the same time very exhausted. It's exhausting talking to people about this issue and having to hear a lot of racist shit be thrown at you and being forced not to really lose your shit. I can tell you in other places I have, and the reaction isn't really too kind, but I gotta let it out somewhere. In any case, I am exhausted and I do need a break. So, this is probably going to be it. I don't know. I could be back in 2 weeks. For all I know, if there's some crazy story out there that'll get attention if I cover it. But I know now, and I rest assured knowing that there are other channels and other people who are calling this out as well. So it's not just me that's going to cover this issue. We live in a society now where Asian women are being called out. And I know 5 years ago they had control of the narrative, and it was a pretty dark time. So even if I am done with this channel, somebody else is going to take my place, at least on YouTube. But for me, I know I need a break. I know I need to recharge, and whether it be here or somewhere else, you'll probably see me down the line. But if this channel is done, I want to thank you for watching, whether it be a 30-second clip that I did or an entire hour-long interview, particularly in the last couple of videos. I want to thank you for watching because I put a lot of work into them. And if you're a black or Hispanic man that likes Asian women, I hope that coming across one of my videos has made you feel more comfortable in knowing that the difficulties, the struggles that you face are not all your fault. Until next time.